Chapter 1076. Boom! The pitch-black lotus flower actually exploded in an instant, producing a huge burst of energy that instantly sent the heaven-earth bell flying. Ding Tingding's expression didn't change, but he was shocked on the inside. He reached out to recall the bell and sized up Mo Lien with a smile on his face. Seems a bit interesting. Prince Mo, even with his eyesight, he actually couldn't recognize what kind of technique Prince Mo's hand seal was. Mo Lien didn't say a word. She directly pinched out several ink-colored lotus flowers and threw them at Ding Tingding. He had only comprehended the second realm of the Death Lotus Seal's inheritance, but it was more than enough to deal with a little mystic cultivator whose cultivation was sealed at level 15. Are you prepared to die? Thief Sage Ding Tingding. Mo Lien pursed her thin lips and pounced forward, her slender fingers grabbing the other party's arm. The purple flames burning on her fingers were about to burn through Ding Tingding's arm. Yet he suddenly opened his mouth. After fusing with the demonic beast Fire Qilin Fanged snake, the poison had long become one with his body. At this moment, he spat out a mouthful of mist. If it were anyone else, they would definitely be caught off guard and fall for it. Unfortunately, Mo Lien had long been on guard against him, and he was an apothecary who could resolve all kinds of abnormal conditions in the body. Thus, this kind of Fire Qilin Fanged snake's poison was naturally completely useless against him. At this moment, a black lotus imprint appeared on Mo Lien's palm. She flew up and took advantage of Ding Tingding's momentary lapse of confusion to press her palm, which contained a huge amount of mystic energy, on Ding Tingding's chest with a bang. However, he suddenly felt a slight stabbing pain in his palm and abruptly pulled it back. Cough! Ding Tingding abruptly took a step back, and a trace of blood inevitably slid down from the corner of his mouth. He suddenly laughed hysterically. Mo Lien, oh Mo Lien. Do you think you've won? Take a look at your hand, okay? Mo Lien looked down at her palm expressionlessly. There was a small pinhole in the center of her palm, and a drop of blood had already formed. Ding Tingding smugly raised his head and laughed. I purposely placed a poison needle here. You've been fooled this time. Prince Mo, you're about to die. Ha ha ha. My beauty's skin is finally here. Mo Lien didn't make a sound. She only took advantage of the moment when Ding Tingding raised his head and laughed to leap into the air like a ghost. With a grab and press, she locked Ding Tingding's shoulder. Ding Tingding's pitch-black eyes flashed with a dark light. Without thinking, a green vine sword formed in his hand and viciously stabbed towards Prince Mo's heart. This fast, vicious, and accurate sword strike at close range was naturally blocked by Prince Mo's full-body spiritual armor. A close-range lotus seal once again slammed into Ding Tingding's chest. The lotus seal even exploded several times on his body. In the blink of an eye, half of the bridge pier was blasted into smithereens. Ding Tingding glanced at him in astonishment before falling down along with the shattered pier. He seemed to be very surprised. Prince Mo had clearly been pierced by the poison needle in his chest earlier, so why was he completely fine and didn't have any reaction at all? Mo Lien lowered her head to glance at the small red dot in her palm. Her body suddenly swayed, and she coughed softly. Hui Feng and the others quickly rushed to her side and shouted with rapt attention, Your Highness. Mo Lien waved her hand to stop him from speaking. Return to the Eastern Palace immediately. An eighth layer with spirit great spiritual master who had also fused with the power of evil beasts wasn't easy to deal with. Chapter 1077. Cult Master, how are you? The left protector, who was supporting the drenched man and walking briskly along the riverbank, exclaimed softly in shock. Cough, cough, cough. Although the cult master was in a sorry state, extreme joy floated between his brows. Ha ha ha. Cough, cough. The left protector hurriedly took out a medicinal pill and fed it to him. Cult Master, your heart was heavily injured by a dagger earlier, and it hasn't fully recovered during this period. Now, your heart has been struck by Prince Mo's palm again and again. You had better take care of your body. Cough, how much better do you think he is than me? The cult master smiled smugly. I merely received 2 palm strikes from him. It'll be fine as long as I shift the important organs in my body. He said indifferently, it's not like I'll die. He's different. He was poisoned by the devil grass, and no one in the world can cure him, ha ha ha. Cough, cough, he's dead for sure. Right now, he still doesn't know that he'll soon become a corpse, ha 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 ha. After saying this, the cult master laughed crazily again until he spat out a mouthful of blood before stopping. Cult master? The left protector turned pale with fright as he supported his worrisome master, somewhat blaming him for not cherishing his body. The cult master's playfulness was his second nature, and his emotions were hard to discern. When had he ever seen someone injure him to this extent? How could he still laugh? Take me to the mystic beast forest. He abruptly grabbed his wrist. The left protector's dog eyes widened in shock. Cult master? Why do you still want to go to the mystic beast forest when you're injured like this? Shouldn't he immediately return to the headquarters to treat his injuries? Less nonsense, take me there. The cult master coughed up blood, and his body involuntarily pressed down on the left protector. The left protector looked down and saw that his master had fainted just like that. He couldn't help but be anxious and angry, but he didn't dare to go against his master's wishes. He could only find a place to treat his master's injuries before taking him to the mystic beast forest. He thought, how did I end up with a master like you? Idiot ding ting ding. After 7 days and 6 nights of killing profound beasts, he was endlessly absorbing the boundless profound energy in this place. Arbor frantically assimilated the essence earth in his body and smoothly advanced a level without any mishaps, stepping into the ranks of level 13 mystic cultivators. Looking inside, he found that less than a third of the life essence earth was left after the rapid fusion. It seemed that the estimated fusion time would be much faster. She suddenly opened her eyes, her heart beating like a drum for no reason, and her mind was in a strange panic. She hurriedly reached out to soothe her noisy chest and looked up at the blue sky in the mystic realm with a puzzled expression. What's going on? For a moment, he felt very flustered. Before she could think about it, she heard a series of heavy footsteps. He didn't even need to look to know that it was that damned giant ape senior. The giant ape arrived in front of her and suddenly stretched out its hairy arms, lifting her up as usual. He did not allow her to resist at all. Stomp, stomp, stomp. His fat and thick feet stepped on the soft soil as he carried her back to the stone tablet. Xiao Qiao. When Sixth Zheng saw her appear, he couldn't help but sigh in relief. In truth, they had already been released from the sealed space 2 days ago, but Sixth Zheng had not seen Arbor's figure the entire time, so he was secretly anxious. Chapter 1078. Seeing that she was safe and sound this time, he relaxed. Qin Susu also nodded slightly at Arbor. This mystic realm was rather strange. When she was first isolated in that damned sealed space, she was almost torn to shreds by the swarms of mystic beasts. When she recalled how the second young master had told her to protect Miss Qiao at all costs after entering the mystic realm, she couldn't help but blush. It seemed like there was nothing she could do to help. Even now, she only suspected that the 10,000-year Xuanji core was inside the small house, but her group couldn't pass through no matter what. Arbor had been carried all the way here by the giant ape. The colossal ape's arm was as thick as 7 or 8 of her thighs. The scene of being carried all the way here was really hard to describe in a few words. Today was the 8th day since they entered the mystic realm. Everyone had already completed the first round of the Mystic Beast Mystic Realms special training. According to the stone tablet, those who completed the first round of training only needed to advance by 1 level within 10 days to be able to head to the small house in the forest and pay their respects to Senior Xuanji. However, when they were transported out 2 days ago, Little Sixth Zheng, Qin Susu, Bailey Wu, and Bailey Zhen all felt that they had reached the critical point of advancing, but they still hadn't advanced after 2 days. At this time, they all looked at Arbor. When they saw it, their eyes immediately widened in shock. She had advanced. Because Arbor had an aura-concealing talisman on her, her cultivation had been forcibly deducted by 5 levels. Now, everyone saw that the little girl in front of them was at the 8th level of the mystic realm. Miss Chow had always been at the 7th level of cultivation, although her cultivation wasn't quite in line with her strength. Most people attributed this inconsistency to Miss Chow being a great talisman master. Prince Mo's consort had actually advanced. This meant that she could head to the small house before everyone else. Wei Nanshu looked gloomily at Arbor, his heart filled with indignation. When he thought of how Arbor would be the first to head to the small house to choose a secret treasure, his heart felt like thousands of ants were crawling and rolling. It was extremely unbearable. Prince Mo's consort would definitely be the first to choose the 10,000-year Xuanji core. Hee, senior giant ape, isn't this a little unfair? The giggling Sikong Fuling appeared in front of the giant ape in a flash. The little girl's cultivation is at the 7th level. It's much easier for her to advance to the 8th level than most of us. After all, everyone knew that the higher one's cultivation level was, the harder it was to advance. The amount of profound energy needed to advance from the 7th level to the 8th level and the amount of profound energy needed to advance from the 12th level to the 13th level could be said to be the difference between heaven and earth. The difference between a canal and the sea. When everyone heard this, their pupils constricted slightly. A level 12 mystic cultivator. The demonic cult's holy maiden was already a level 12 mystic cultivator at such a young age. Her talent was simply terrifying to the extreme. Without a doubt, the holy maiden's cultivation was the highest among them. Roar, roar. The giant ape was very human-like and roared at her twice, as if it was berating her to quickly retreat. Humph, the saintess of the demonic cult, Sikong Fuling, instantly turned hostile. She reached out and grabbed in Arbor's direction. If this young lady slaughters this little girl right now, doesn't that mean that all the rankings will have to be redone? Wei Nanshu, Ying Jian, and the others stood on the sidelines to watch, unable to conceal the schadenfreude in their eyes. It couldn't be any better that the holy maiden was willing to make a move. If a level 12 mystic cultivator wanted to kill a level 8 mystic cultivator, it would be a matter of minutes. Chapter 1079. Arbor was completely expressionless, as if completely unsurprised that this saint of the demonic cult would suddenly attack her. After throwing out a defensive talisman to block the saint's claw, Arbor's figure flickered, and she had already floated behind the giant ape. Roar! Sure enough, the giant ape senior suddenly attacked in the next second. Its plump palm flung out and mercilessly struck the saint of the demonic cult, Sikong Fuling's face, as if it was going to flatten her small face with one slap. The saint dodged slightly to the left. Although she dodged quickly enough, she couldn't match the giant ape's agility. It rushed forward and once again attacked the saint's small face with its fan-like palm. Sikong Fuling's face darkened, and she cursed, "Damn it. This damn giant ape was targeting her face with every move. Could it be that it hadn't heard of not hitting people's faces when hitting them?" Xiao Mu stood leisurely to the side as she calmly watched this saint of the demonic cult fend off the giant ape's powerful attacks with great difficulty. After the giant ape's several slaps missed the saint's face, it angrily roared at the sky. Eastern Kingdom's eldest crown prince, Ying Jian, who was originally standing on the side to watch the show, was caught off guard by this sound and inexplicably spat out a mouthful of blood. What a powerful sound wave technique! This giant ape could actually use its roar to injure people, so its strength was clearly extraordinary. At this time, the giant ape had already been provoked by the saint of the demonic cult, Sikong Fuling, who was as slippery as a loach. It stayed in this mystic energy-dense mystic realm all year round, so its martial strength was comparable to a peak level 15 mystic cultivator. The more they exchanged blows, the more apprehensive Sikong Fuling became. At the same time, she was well aware that the reason she was able to smoothly enter the mystic realm in the beginning was that this giant ape had not used its full strength. Taking a deep breath, Sikong Fuling suddenly summoned her mystic beast, four-winged jade-eyed tiger. The moment that mystic beast landed, it roared and fearlessly pounced at the giant ape to bite it. The giant ape roared angrily a few times and stomped on the ground. Its body jumped up and down, nimbly dodging the four-winged jade-eyed tiger's attack. It then slapped the four-winged jade-eyed tiger's face. The four-winged jade-eyed tiger wasn't as lucky as its master. This slap just happened to land on its head, causing it to stagger and shake its head dizzily. Just as Sikong Fuling turned to check on the four-winged jade-eyed tiger, Arbor suddenly moved. Her agile figure swayed, and dozens of icicles flashing with a cold white light suddenly shot toward Sikong Fuling's back. Whoosh! 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 Sikong Fuling immediately sensed the approaching danger and rolled on the ground as she dodged several icicles. However, in the next second, he was shocked by Arbor, who suddenly appeared in front of him. The startled swan dagger brushed past the demonic saintess' left cheek. If she hadn't rolled away to avoid it, the startled swan dagger would have slit her throat. The little girl was too ruthless and didn't leave any leeway. The demonic saintess broke out in a cold sweat, but when she turned to look at Arbor, she laughed coquettishly. What a fast dagger! Without a word, Arbor lightly tapped the ground with the tip of its foot and flew into the air. With another flash, the hundreds of icicles in its hand rapidly streaked across the deathly still air. TSK 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 TSK. The saintess dodged several times in a row, anger flashing through her still eyes as she activated her defensive weapon to block. What a fellow! A little level 8 Mystic Cultivator forced a level 12 Mystic Cultivator to retreat without using a talisman. Chapter 1080. With several sizzling sounds, the icicles rained down and continuously struck Sikong Fuling's defensive barrier. The defensive artifact could still block a dozen or so fierce attacks, but which defensive artifact could withstand 100 or so fierce attacks? Sikong Fuling's expression darkened. She slightly relaxed her mystic energy, and the entire defensive barrier was broken open by the icicles with a bam. Bam, bam, bam. Everyone speechlessly turned their heads to look, only to see Senior Giant Ape grinning widely and happily clapping his large, furry palms. His heart was probably biased to God knows where. They originally found it very strange that Senior Giant Ape's enthusiasm for Miss Chow was completely different from theirs. Could this be a natural affinity for each other? Cough, cough, cough. After the defensive barrier was broken, Sikong Fuling dodged a row of icicles with lightning-like speed. But she was still unavoidably hit in the thigh and elbow by several icicles. Streaks of red abrasions appeared especially conspicuous on her fair skin. Sikong Fuling's gaze had already turned completely cold, and she looked up at Arbor. I originally thought that you were a pretty good girl, but who knew that you also know how to sneak attack from behind? Arbor blinked but did not speak. He flipped his hand and shot a sharp, aqua-colored blade that brushed past Sikong Fuling's scalp, who had suddenly fallen backward. Swish, swish. The flowing water arrow was impossible to guard against. Meanwhile, Ing Jian and the others who were watching from the side were already stupefied by this scene. How could a little level 8 Mystic Cultivator now beat up a level 12 Mystic Cultivator? Could it be that Miss Chow secretly used a talisman without their knowledge? This was too shocking. A fervent glint flashed through Wei Nanchu's eyes. No wonder everyone said that great talisman masters had exceedingly formidable means. It looked like this was indeed the case. You probably used some magic treasure to conceal your cultivation realm. At this time, the holy maiden finally understood. She wasn't stupid. After fighting until now, if she still didn't know that Arbor wasn't some level 8 Mystic Cultivator, then she really could buy a piece of tofu and kill herself. Arbor didn't pay any attention to her. He only glanced at her from the corner of his eyes before looking back at the giant ape. The giant ape seemed to be very happy with her victory. It walked in front of her and stretched out its furry gray arm to grab her. He turned around and left the crowd, minding his own business. A dim light flickered in Wei Nanchu's eyes. His heart was filled with unspeakable jealousy and hatred, but he did not dare to make a move. After all, even Sikong Fuling was unable to gain an advantage over the giant ape, and Arbor's savagery had already left a very deep impression in his heart. With his intelligence and wisdom, it was naturally impossible for him to pick a time like this to stand out. Xiao Mi, on the other hand, jumped up happily. You're going to the little hut in the forest to pay your respects to Senior Xuanji. That's great. Sis, you're amazing. The Aikido tribe's Akir involuntarily pursed her lips and sneered, it's not like you're going to the hut yourself. What are you so happy about? Xiao Mi harumphed and glanced at her haughtily. What do you know? How can a brainless woman with big breasts like you, who pounces forward at the sight of men, possibly understand the precious sisterhood between us? Akir's face alternated between green and white at Xiao Mi's blunt words. She twisted her body and stomped her feet. She hugged Ali's arm and called out delicately, Ali, look at her. Chapter 1081. Ali glanced at Xiao Mi with a gloomy expression. He was also very dissatisfied with Xiao Mi's tone and attitude. It was as if aside from Arbor, no one else was worth anything in her eyes. It was a little infuriating. Xiao Mi shrugged and retracted her gaze. Then, she walked to the side with Gong Sun Lai and sat down. She closed her eyes and continued to cultivate. In the past 2 days, the mystic energy in the entire Mystic Beast secret realm had thinned considerably. However, they could instinctively feel that the waves of energy coming from the small house were continuously filling the void of mystic energy here. Such a powerful object, it had to be. The 10,000-year-old Xuanji core. On the other side, Arbor was carried by the giant ape's arm the entire way. She watched speechlessly as the ape moved and leaped through the lush green forest and quickly arrived in front of a small house. This small house had red walls and black tiles. There was a red copper bell hanging from the door. The crisp tinkling of the bell could be heard from afar. The giant ape put her down and gently poked Arbor's shoulder with its finger. Xiao Mu turned to look at it and said with a nod, I can go in, but next time, you can't always carry me back and forth. She wasn't a little doll. What was with her being carried around all the time? She was so shameless. The giant ape grinned at her. This big guy had been in the secret realm for so many years that its intelligence had long since developed. Naturally, it could understand her words. Seeing it smile, Xiao Mu took it as a sign that it agreed with her. She then nodded, put her 2 little claws behind her back, and walked towards the house with light steps. If she advanced within 10 days, she would receive the first opportunity to visit Senior Xuanji. No matter what, this was still a rare opportunity. Arbor began to look forward to it. What kind of good things would this Senior Xuanji give her? After all, she was the first person to successfully advance in the secret realm. It wouldn't do if Senior Xuanji didn't have anything to give her. Creak. The door to the small house was pushed open by her small hand. Looking inside the house, everything was arranged in an orderly manner, spotless. Although it looked like it had been a long time since someone had lived here, everything was properly tidied up. It was probably the work of the spiritual giant ape. Who knew how many years this fellow had been alone in the mystic realm? It only saw humans once every 10 years. It must have been very lonely. Oh, my young child, you have come at last. A cheerful voice suddenly drilled into her ear. Xiao Mu abruptly turned around and swept her gaze around the room, but she did not see anyone. Stop looking. I'm right above you. Xiao Mu abruptly raised her head, and what entered her sight was a pair of small feet in pink embroidered shoes dangling from the ceiling beam, swaying back and forth. Arbor. Do you feel that this old woman is different from the senior expert you imagined? Ahaha, that's right. Xuanji laughed heartily. I hate being restrained by the rules of the world the most. Acting according to one's nature is my motto. Arbor suddenly interrupted her. Let's get to the point. If you don't hurry up and say it, this virtual image of yours will completely disappear. Xuanji was silent for a moment, then suddenly laughed maniacally again. Good. My 200 years of waiting were not in vain. Little fellow, you are indeed an interesting child. Chapter 1082. Arbor was speechless as she looked at this senior expert. She couldn't help but mutter softly, "I don't even know if it's a trap. There are no secret treasures or spirit weapons at all." She was very clear that this senior sitting on the beam in front of her seemed to be talking to her, but in reality, it was just a remnant shadow. Everything she said was preset by herself. "Don't think that because I came from the mountains, I can be easily deceived. Little fellow, you're the first person in more than 200 years who can really advance in 10 days in this mystic realm. My bitter wait was not in vain." Sigh. Arbor raised her eyebrows slightly. "My mystic realm has been open for more than 200 years and has accepted at least 20 batches of people. If I'm not wrong, my encouragement reward Xuanji pill should have been used up in the last round of the mystic realm trial." Arbor's mouth twitched. If Wei Nanshu and the others heard this, they would probably vomit blood on the spot. "Sigh, child. From today onwards, you're the second-generation leader of our Xuanji school." "Wait. What second-generation leader of the Xuanji school? Then wouldn't the first generation be this senior Xuanji in front of her? After 300 years, she was only the second generation. What a poor sect this was. She didn't want to be some leader. She refused to accept this kind of job that forced a duck onto a perch. Don't think that being the leader of our Xuanji school is a laborious task. In fact, there are many benefits." Arbor curled her lips noncommittally. Suddenly, the figure sitting on the beam landed lightly in front of her. In one hand, she held a fist-sized object that was as bright as a ruby. "This is a 10,000-year-old Xuanji core." Senior Xuanji sighed quietly. "It contains all my cultivation and strength in this life. You only need to absorb it into your dantian and slowly adjust to it. After a few decades, you'll be able to convert all my cultivation into your own." Arbor looked at the Xuanji core in that person's hand in shock. This was... Senior Xuanji had infused all of his power into it before he died. Similar to the pill inheritance she had received from teacher Long Chuyun, what she was about to receive now was a pure cultivation inheritance. Generally speaking, no one would even attempt to obtain such a cultivation inheritance. This was because it was extremely painful to inject all of one's power into the inheritance jade. The process was also extremely dangerous. There's a 90% chance that you'll die a horrible death before you've even succeeded. The remaining success rate was less than 10%, and it was possible to face all kinds of strange problems. Therefore, even when some of the elders in the family passed away, very few people would be stupid enough to choose to pass their cultivation to the younger generation. Because it was too difficult. Of course, if there really was a senior expert who carved his entire life's worth of cultivation into an inheritance jade stone and imparted it to you, that would be the rhythm of a meteoric rise. Think about it, one's life could be shortened by at least 60 to 100 years of struggle. A country bumpkin could immediately become a powerful expert. This inheritance red jade contains my entire life's worth of cultivation. Now, the opportunity is in front of you. Little fellow. If you agree to become the second leader of my Xuanji school, kneel down and kowtow to me. Chapter 1083. Darling Chow didn't make a sound for a long time as she stared suspiciously at Senior Xuanji, who had a faint smile on her lips. This was a soul that was more than 200 years old. Not only was it transparent, its face was already blurred. Senior Xuanji was obviously anxious when she didn't react after so long. She urged, "Why aren't you kneeling?" Okay, I'll tell you everything." "Child, why are you so quick-witted?" That's right. To accept my cultivation inheritance, you have to agree to 3 conditions. As I said just now, becoming the second sect master of my Xuanji school is the first condition. This deceitful senior had probably set up this language trap 100 years ago so that the juniors who came would immediately be mesmerized by the Xuanji core and kneel down to accept her conditions. Then, she would tell others that that was actually only the first condition and that there were still 2 conditions waiting for them. Arbor rolled her eyes and silently moved her feet to retreat. Senior Xuanji sighed and said, "The second condition is actually quite simple." When my Xuanji school was first established, there were 103 first-generation disciples. After 60 years of continuous hard work by this senior, the school has expanded to more than 5,000 people. To only accept 5,000 disciples after 60 years, it was probably just a third-rate school. The second task I want you to do is to find the 103 first-generation disciples and recruit them back into our Xuanji school. Arbor was speechless and complained softly, "There are so many people, where can I find the first-generation disciples? I know you'll definitely say that I'm fantasizing and unrealistic." Indeed. Arbor didn't want to scold her, but impatience was already showing in her eyes. She decided to run. She didn't want to take over this Xuanji school's mess. She had to become the sect master and find the first-generation disciples. How troublesome and annoying. I have the nameplates of the 103 first-generation disciples here. As long as you're within 1,000 feet of them, you'll be able to sense them. Arbor. A distance of 1,000 feet is actually not that far. You can fly there casually. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Arbor turned around and ran. He reached out and pulled on the door, but it didn't budge. How could he let her out so easily? Arbor rolled up his sleeves, intending to give this senior Xuanji a good beating before asking her to let him out. Unexpectedly, when she turned around, she saw the senior looking at her with tears in her eyes. Although her face was blurred, she could tell that she was heartbroken. "Please don't despise our Xuanji sect. How am I asking for too much? I've given you my entire life's cultivation. And the 103 disciples of our Xuanji school will be your strongest backing in the future. The third condition is even simpler. I want you to find that old bastard Tianjizi's direct disciple and crush him with your strength. Just give him a slap in the face for me. I can even wake up laughing in the underworld." The more Xiao Mu listened to this bizarre condition, the stranger it became. Xiao Mu turned around and slammed on the door. "Open the door, open the door. Giant ape, I know you're outside. Hurry up and open the door. Otherwise, she would tear down this lousy place. Just agree to my request, little fellow. Other than the Xuanji core, I can also give you all the entrance fees I've collected from the 20 batches of people who entered the mystic realm." Arbor, I'm actually speechless. Chapter 1084. So this person had cheated so many people of their spirit weapons and dharma treasures so that they could be offered to her as a tribute that she really had to thank her entire family. If Senior Xuanji had a physical body right now, she would definitely be hugging her leg and crying. Arbor turned her head and shot her a displeased glance, resolutely refusing to accept this 10,000-year-old Xuanji core. No problem, she already had the essence soil. She just needed to fuse it with her essence soil, and she would definitely be able to advance another level in a short period of time. That would be enough. As for Senior Xuanji's cultivation inheritance jade, she could be considered unlucky enough to enjoy it. With so many additional conditions, how could she be a patient person? No way, no way, no way. Our dear Xiao Mu shook her small hand vigorously and gave an affirmative answer. "I won't accept it." She was about to turn and kick the door open when suddenly, a green vine shot out from her wrist and automatically coiled around the Xuanji core in Senior Xuanji's palm. Arbor couldn't stop it in time. She watched as that cheating tree directly sucked the Xuanji core into the mystic domain with a whoosh. She was shocked. Stunned. Stunned. Wasn't this crazy tree in seclusion? Could it be that the temptation of the Xuanji core was so great that it lured the little tree out of seclusion? Arbor hurriedly used her inner sight to take a look. She saw that after that cheating tree pulled the Xuanji core into the depths of the mystic domain, it covered the mystic domain with its roots. The entire tree emitted a pure and holy green glow as it pretended to be dead and motionless. It looked like it hadn't come out of seclusion at all. Huh. If the little Treant was in front of her right now, she would definitely go up and beat it up without a second word. This darn fellow, how many times had it cheated her all these years? It was practically no trick of Count. Arbor nagged, but Senior Xuanji was overjoyed. She danced and shouted, Xuanji School's second-generation sect master. You're the second generation. Your whole family is second generation. Arbor turned around angrily and glared at this Senior Xuanji whose face was blurred out. Second sect leader, I'll leave the 3 missions to you. Do them well, I know you can do it. Senior Xuanji laughed and said, oh right, if you meet the descendants of the merfolk race when you travel the pugilistic world in the future, help them if you can. This is already the 4th matter. Xiao Mu grumpily shouted at her. Although she knew that this guy couldn't hear her at all, her little heart still hurt from anger. Why are there so many problems? Just a slight effort. How could there be so many easy things in this world? It all depends on her mood. Xiao Mu turned her head proudly and kicked the door again. This time, the door opened as soon as he heard the sound. Xiao Mu ran out without looking back. She heard Senior Xuanji call out from behind her, Second Sect Master, remember the mission I gave you. Especially if you meet Tian Jizi's junior disciples in the future, you must give them a good slap in the face. Arbor had already run far away, throwing the words of the Xuanji school's first-generation sect master to the back of her mind. She didn't know what kind of enmity this guy had with Senior Tian Jizi, but he actually wanted her to slap Senior Tian Jizi's disciple's face. And it had to be a good slap. What a baffling person. Sigh, as a baby, she really didn't understand the world of the senior experts. Arbor shook her head and ran out of the forest. Suddenly, she heard a roar from behind. Chapter 1085. Turning around, she saw the giant ape grinning widely as it crawled over to her on all fours. It tilted its fat head and smiled charmingly naively. I'll walk by myself, Arbor said as she spread open her hand. The giant ape retracted its furry arm and glanced at her in embarrassment. Suddenly, it threw a pile of items in front of her. Arbor. What else could she say? Weren't these the entrance fees she had swindled from other people? The spirit stones that little Sixth Zheng had handed over. The short spiritual dagger that Wei Nanshu had handed over was embedded with a row of red, green, and blue gems. The demonic cult's holy maiden, Sikong Fuling, had given her 2 4-winged jade-eyed tiger canines. It really had everything that one could wish for. Xiao Mu rummaged through that trash pile and took out Wei Nanshu's short spiritual blade and another high-level mystic weapon bow and arrow. She placed them in her hands to cushion them. She hung the short dagger on her waist and carried the bow and arrow on her back. As for the rest of the pile, Arbor didn't refuse anything and put them all into her inner world. Sigh, she really had to reluctantly accept a pile of scrap metal. The giant ape tilted its head and grinned happily as it watched her skillfully put away the items. It then turned around and led her through the valley, returning to the place where everyone was gathered in a short while. Seeing her return, Xiaomi happily went up to her. Younger sister, did you get your reward? Arbor showed her the bow and arrow on her back and the short dagger on her waist. Xiaomi was delighted to see them. Not bad, not bad. A mystic weapon and a spiritual weapon. This Senior Xuanji is really quite generous. Arbor inwardly disdained her. That person didn't give the reward for nothing. There were still 1, 2, 3, 4 lousy conditions. However, her expression didn't change, and she still wore a stoic expression as she nodded reluctantly in agreement. At this time, Wei Nanshu suddenly shot in front of Arbor, his eyes staring intently at the short dagger hanging on her waist. Fuck, wasn't that the spiritual weapon he handed over to Senior Giant Ape? At this moment, it was actually hanging on the little girl's waist. The row of red, blue, and green gemstones on the scabbard was custom-made by him. Every single one of them was extremely valuable. Naturally, he could recognize it at a glance. Wei Nanshu was fuming with anger. He pointed at the dagger hanging on Arbor's waist and angrily asked, "Why do you have this? What are you doing? Red eyebrows and green eyes staring at my sister, are you tired of living?" Without another word, Xiaomi stepped forward and defended him. A grown man yelling at a little girl. Isn't it very interesting? You! Get out of the way! Wei Nanshu said angrily, I gave this dagger to Senior Giant Ape 8 days ago. Why are you here now? A reward. Arbor looked at him as if he was an idiot. Wei Nanshu choked on her words and didn't know what to say. The dagger was indeed his, but he had already handed it over to the giant ape. Now that Senior Xuanji insisted on giving the dagger to Miss Chow as a reward, what could he do? Other than forcibly suppressing his anger, he had no other choice. Dong 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 dong. The giant ape took heavy steps and threw a stone tablet in front of everyone. Written on it, in this round of trial, you will be thrown into the cold pond. As long as you can persist in the cold pond for 7 days, you will have the opportunity to meet Senior Xuanji. Work hard, do your best. Secret treasures and spiritual weapons are all waiting for you in front. Chapter 1086. Arbor looked at the stone tablet and silently rolled her eyes. This Senior Xianji was too good at tricking people. She didn't even have a small reward like the Xuanji pill, yet she was still using secret treasures to lure people. The giant ape impatiently reached out and patted the stone tablet. Participants of the trial, please press your palm on the stone tablet and the timer will be activated immediately. Those who leave the water before the time is up will be deemed to have failed the trial. This time, even the usually bold and reckless idiot Bai Li hesitated a little. He and his sister Bai Li Jin looked at each other. If you don't participate in the second round of the trial, you will be forcefully transported out within 5 days. Fan Shuming gritted his teeth and stepped forward. There is no other choice. Hong Bai saw that even Fan Shuming, this timid opponent, had gone up to press his palm and hurriedly walked over, unwilling to be left behind. The two of them pressed their palms one after the other, then their bodies were enveloped by a white light and they were immediately transported out. Arbor watched them leave one by one and exchanged glances with Xiaomi. She walked over to her side and stuffed a fire talisman into her hand. Don't force yourself. Xiaomi nodded and was transported out in the next second. Arbor saw that the surroundings were empty and everyone had left. She took out a meat bun from her inner world and took a bite. She turned her head and saw the giant ape baring its teeth at her and putting on an exasperated expression. Arbor hurriedly looked down at herself. What's wrong, what's wrong? She had already advanced a level. Compared to most of the people here, she was already hard-working enough, all right. Why was he still looking at her with that expression? Suddenly, the giant ape grabbed her small hand and pressed it directly on the stone tablet. Arbor widened her eyes. The next second, she felt her body lighten and she was also transported out. The most despicable thing was that the ape even snatched the meat bun that she had only taken a small bite out of. The bone-chilling cold water enveloped Arbor, causing her to tremble slightly. Then, just like when she came, a warm current flowed out from her chest and flowed around her body, causing her to unconsciously stretch out her arms and legs and paddle in the pool. This feeling of being surrounded by water and being completely enveloped by the power of water was really not bad. This cold pool was the one connected to the entrance. It was just that the water here was colder than the one at the entrance. However, this was not a big deal. Arbor swam around in this pool as if she was having fun. When she focused her gaze, she saw that not far away, the Ying brothers had covered themselves in a defensive barrier and were shivering in the water, their faces ashen. These two people looked rather pitiful. Xiao Mu swam over cheerfully while swinging her little legs. She then circled around the duo's defensive barrier twice. Ying Jian was standing inside the defensive barrier. Through the transparent barrier, he was trembling with fear as he looked at the little girl who was circling around them. What are you trying to do? Ying Jian's eyes were about to fall out of their sockets. Arbor swam around 3 times and stopped in front of them. She muttered to herself, I wonder how powerful my Vajra little jade hands will be in the cold pool water. With that, the jade in her hand flashed and the Vajra talisman activated. Arbor's small hand was like a steel claw, directly grabbing at the defensive barrier in front of Ying Jian. Thud! The first claw was blocked by the defensive barrier. Chapter 1087. Arbor's eyes lit up. Unwilling to give up, it stretched out its claws again. A second claw, a third claw. Upon seeing this, the third prince, Fa, had already quietly retreated into the depths of the water. Although the water pressure in the deep waters increased and the amount of profound energy required to maintain the defensive barrier would definitely be greater, the most important thing right now was to leave this little devil's claws. Stop joking around. Did this little devil think that this defensive barrier was indestructible? That would consume a lot of profound energy. Not only did it have to withstand the water pressure, but it also had to withstand the little devil's attacks. The loss of profound energy would definitely be faster. They still had to persevere in this godforsaken place for 7 days. Fa secretly complained in his heart. He felt that he might not even be able to persevere for a single day. But now that he had been sent out, it had not even been 15 days. He did not even get the consolation prize, the Star Jade Pill. Wasn't this trip to the Mystic Realm a joke? If word got out, he would definitely be laughed at. Especially if his brothers from the opposing forces were to find out about this, they would definitely exaggerate about him and show him how incompetent he was. Arbor naturally knew that Fa had sneaked away. But now that Jian was in front of him, it did not matter whether Fa was present or not. With both old and new grudges added together, Arbor planned to settle things with this Jian. Seeing this person standing inside the defensive barrier with such a ridiculous expression, it was as if he had eaten a mouthful of feces. Chi on the third claw, a small crack appeared on Jian's defensive barrier. When Arbor saw this, he immediately became spirited. This Vajra talisman could still break other people's defensive barriers, but it was a pity that he had clawed it too many times. On the eighth claw, the defensive barrier on Jian's body suddenly cracked. His entire person also fell out of the defensive barrier in a sorry state, miserably falling into the water. Immediately, he gulped down a large mouthful of ice water. Arbor was satisfied. Stretching out his leg, he used all his strength to kick the cold pond water. After swimming one round around Jian's sprawled body, he waved his hand at him and turned his head to leave. Fuck! Jian's current state of mind was absolutely dumbfounded to the extreme. This little devil, after messing around for a while and breaking his defensive barrier, he left in such an infuriating manner. In a fit of anger, Jian kicked the water to chase after Qiaomu, but to his surprise, the icy water in this glacial pond was very strange. After his entire body was enveloped by the icy water, he felt like he was in an ice cellar in the underworld. His entire body felt heavy from head to toe, and it felt like a boulder was pressing down on his chest, making it difficult for him to breathe. Arbor saw the crown prince of the Eastern Kingdom angrily shout in the water and was forced to gulp down a large mouthful of ice water. His big eyes couldn't help but brighten. He waved his small hand at him in annoyance and then went to find his second target. That's right, he was looking for trouble with the demonic saintess. It was rare for her to be like a fish in water. Others were in such a miserable state. If she didn't take this opportunity to hit them while they were down, how could she live up to the nicknames of Little Fiend and Little Devil that others had given her? Arbor grinned and swam around the pool, but he didn't see any trace of the saintess. She clearly saw Sikong Fuling being transported in with her own eyes. Why was there no trace of her now? Could it be that this fellow also used an invisibility talisman? Arbor's mind stirred, and he opened his spiritual eye to look around. Not long after, he indeed found Sikong Fuling's figure in a corner at the bottom of the pool. She really knew how to hide. Chapter 1088. Arbor's figure, which was about to swim over, suddenly paused. Not far away, he saw Sikong Fuling squatting inside the defensive barrier and gingerly picking up grains of fine sand-like sparkling objects at the bottom of the water. There were still many of these sparkling objects in the corner she was in. Sikong Fuling picked them up very cautiously. Her entire body was curled up inside the defensive barrier, with only 2 fingers sticking out to pick up those sparkling grains of sand one by one. Could this be A forging material called frigid star sand? Arbor felt that he should have guessed the truth, so he quietly swam over and also cast an invisibility talisman on himself. He just openly stared at Seekong Fuling, who was energetically picking up grains of sand one by one. After she finished picking up all the glacial star sand in the surrounding area, Arbor immediately moved. In the water, she could congeal all kinds of water forms at will. Thus, when Seekong Fuling saw in astonishment that a pair of giant hands formed from water suddenly appeared in front of her and directly slapped her defensive barrier, she was unable to resist at all. She only felt a terrifying force rush toward her chest and spit out a mouthful of blood with a pft sound. The entire defensive barrier was instantly torn apart. The small bag of glacial star sand that she had just collected in her hand all fell into that giant hand formed from water. "Who is it?" Seekong Fuling screeched furiously. "Hiding your head and shrinking your tail. Shameless." Arbor directly summoned the giant hand of water back to his side and took the small bag of glacial star sand in the palm of its hand. Opening it, he saw that there were as many as 50 to 60 grains of glacial star sand. He was instantly overjoyed. She didn't know how to forge weapons, but she couldn't resist people who liked to prattle in her ear when they had nothing better to do. Something like, "If there are any such materials, I can help you continue to improve the ferrule. I guarantee that you'll be even more adept at it." Arbor happily put the glacial star sand that Seekong Fuling had painstakingly collected into his inner world. Afterward, his figure appeared in front of Seekong Fuling in an ostentatious manner. By this time, Seekong Fuling had already torn off that invisibility talisman on her body. She was so angry that her eyes and mouth were practically crooked and her entire body was trembling. One had to know that when she discovered that there was a rare divine-level forging material, the frigid star sand, she was overjoyed. In order to prevent others from spying on such a treasure, she even secretly stuck an invisibility talisman on herself, intending to quietly collect it. With these 50 to 60 grains of glacial star sand in his hands, this trip was not in vain. It should be known that frigid star sand might not be of much use in their lower star fields, but in the middle 6 prefectures, a single grain of frigid star sand could be auctioned off at an astronomical price. After all, in a lower star domain like Seekong Planet, mystic weapon masters had already become legendary figures. Those ordinary weapon masters who only knew how to forge ordinary weapons would have no use for this kind of god-grade forging material even if they were given it. Seekong Fuling was really about to explode from anger at this moment. She had never seen such a vile, wretched girl. She had obviously snatched someone else's things and still looked at you with an innocent expression. This face was really infuriating. If she hadn't known that Sir Cult Master valued this darn girl in front of her, she would have thought of a way to get rid of this wretched girl long ago when they first met. This would also prevent her from being so angry that she would ascend to heaven and leave her body. "Return the frigid star sand." Seekong Fuling took a deep breath. "It's useless to you even if you want it." Arbor blinked and shook his head very resolutely. Chapter 1089. Not giving. Seekong Fuling was about to explode from anger. How could there be such a vile brat in this world? Was it reasonable for her to rob on the spot? Don't show up if you don't give. She would have admitted that her skills were inferior, right? Yet you still had to show up and look at her innocently. Seekong Fuling really wanted to rush up and slap this little imp to death. Lord Cult Master was crazy enough to think highly of such a vile character. How much of a masochist was he to ask for a beating? No wonder she got stabbed in the chest. She was asking for it. Seekong Fuling bit her small lips and took a deep breath, secretly suppressing the anger that filled her belly. "Miss Chow, you're not an armament master, so this glacial star sand is of no use to you. I think you don't even know what the glacial star sand is used for." Arbor blinked. "It's used to create divine artifacts. Without adding this, even a top-grade spirit artifact can't transform into a divine artifact." Seekong Fuling looked at her in surprise. "Alright, even if you know what it's used for, you're not an armament master at all, right? It's a waste for this thing to fall into your hands." How about this, I'll buy it from you. When Sikong Fuling said the last 5 words, she felt so aggrieved that she wanted to die. How did she, a dignified saint of the demonic cult, end up in this state? Arbor stretched out a pair of slender white hands and flipped it back and forth in the water. She asked curiously, "What do you have to offer?" "Spirit stones." Sikong Fuling gnashed her teeth. "You've heard of spirit stones, right? The basic resources for spiritual realm cultivation are the same as our magnetite." "Of course I know." Arbor interrupted her with a "don't treat this baby like a fool" expression. She then asked, "How many spirit stones can you give?" 100 pieces. Middle-grade spirit stones. She gritted her teeth and gave a blood-vomiting price. "Deal." Arbor nodded without hesitation and poked Sikong Fuling with his little hand. "Hand it over." Sikong Fuling was stunned on the spot for quite a while before she took out a pouch of mid-grade spirit stones from her inner world with great joy and tossed it to Chow Mu. "I'm not lying to you. This pouch of mid-grade spirit stones is good stuff that can support you for a period of time even if you travel to the middle 6 prefectures." Arbor nodded and then took out a brocade pouch embroidered with black datura flowers from his inner world. Upon seeing this, Sikong Fuling gnashed her teeth in anger. This damned fellow, even the brocade pouch was taken away by her. So shameless. However, seeing that she was able to return the glacial star sand brocade pouch to her, Sikong Fuling's complexion also became a little better. At least she was tactful. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to leave the frigid pools range with this bag of frigid star sand. Arbor opened the brocade pouch and looked through it for a long time, causing Sikong Fuling's brows to jump as a bad premonition suddenly slid past her heart. "Here, for you." The little fellow picked out the tiniest grain of glacial star sand. With a slight wave of his little hand, he wrapped this grain of glacial star sand in a stream of water and threw it in front of the Holy Maiden. The Holy Maiden was stunned for a long time without any reaction. Then, the entire frigid pool was stirred up like boiling water and exploded with a boom. The demonic cult Holy Maiden let out a flustered and exasperated wail. "I said 100 mid-grade spirit stones for a bag of glacial star sand." This fellow was really shameless. He actually had the nerve to pick out the tiniest grain of glacial star sand from the pouch for her. "I'm going to kill you." Chapter 1090. Why didn't she ascend to the heavens? 100 mid-grade spirit stones actually gave her a speck of glacial star sand that was comparable to a speck of dust. She really didn't want to pay for infuriating people to death, right? Sikong Fuling was so angry that her chest heaved up and down as she panted heavily within the defensive barrier. She abruptly struck her palm into the water, and a huge wave crashed toward Arbor. Arbor escaped more nimbly than a fish. Kicking her 2 small feet in the water, she turned around and swam toward the surface of the glacial pond. How could Sikong Fuling allow her to escape after taking the benefits? With a furious roar, she unleashed her greatest underwater potential. Kicking her legs, she injected mystic energy into the defensive barrier while vigorously paddling in the water, chasing after Arbor with a face full of resentment. The other people in the glacial pond had long sensed this unusual movement. Ing Fa's first suspect was that fellow Arbor. But hearing the fierce roar, it seemed to be that saint of the demonic cult, Her Excellency Sikong Fuling. Could it be that this Prince Mo consort bullied Sikong Fuling again? Heavens! Just how vile was this person's temperament? Never mind that she bullied their eldest crown prince, but now she even dared to shit on Sikong Fuling's head. She was truly reckless. When Sikong Fuling fought with her just now, she lost by half a notch. Did that crown princess think that Sikong Fuling's cultivation was inferior to hers? She was the saint of the demonic cult and had countless trump cards in her hands. She definitely hadn't used her full strength yet. They should let that Prince Mo consort try kicking an iron plate so that she wouldn't always look at them with disdain and find trouble with them all the time. A huge wave rushed toward Arbor's back. As if she had a pair of eyes on the back of her head, When the huge wave was less than an inch away from her head, a huge palm formed from water directly slapped down that sky-high wave. Arbor kicked the water and swam freely while turning her head to glance at that fellow seacone fulling from time to time. Seeing that she was a little far away from her, she stopped and waited for her on the spot. Seeing that she was chasing after her, she hurriedly kicked her little legs and swam a few more times. After several times, Seacone Fulling was exhausted and battered. Her beautiful eyes glared angrily at the little imp in front of her through the heavy mist. If she could grab that brat's head right now, she would definitely press him to death. This damned brat was truly infuriating, but she couldn't do anything to him. This was what made Seacone Fulling most depressed. Suddenly, a huge black shadow appeared in the mist. Its bell-like eyes stared straight at him. If not for Seacone Fulling's audacity, she would have been frightened to death by it. The giant ape stretched out its drenched arm and picked up Xiao Mu, who was causing trouble everywhere. It was as if it was glaring at a disobedient child, and the anger in its eyes was too tangible for its own good. The giant ape's thoughts right now were probably, "I told you to train properly in the water, but you're messing around everywhere and having so much fun." Was this appropriate? Arbor pursed his little mouth and protested, "I've already discussed with you that you're not allowed to carry me around in the future." The giant ape carried the little fellow away from Seacone Fulling and the others and tossed her into a corner at the bottom of the water. Then, it sat down in front of him like a freaking mountain and blocked the space around her. That's enough. Chapter 1091. Xiao Mu grumpily rolled her eyes at it. She poked its furry body with her little finger, but the giant ape didn't budge an inch. Arbor was somewhat helpless. Looking at the situation, the giant ape wanted to imprison her in this small place and let her cultivate properly for a few days. This fellow was truly conscientious in its duty, sparing no effort to urge her to work hard. "Fine, let's cultivate then." Arbor waved her hand and opened the defensive mystic artifact. She sat inside the defensive barrier and began her 7-day cultivation journey. Opening the defensive barrier was because she wanted to set up a mystic guiding talisman formation around her small body. The mystic guiding talisman formation was drawn by her talisman paper, so it probably wouldn't be effective if wet. If she could draw jade talismans in the future, she wouldn't need to open the defensive barrier even in the water. The little fellow calmed down. The entire cold pond also quieted down. The most miserable one was Ing Jian. After his defensive barrier was broken, he couldn't hold on for more than an hour in the bone-chilling cold pond water. At this time, he was lying on the ground beside the cold pond with a sorrowful cry, looking up at the dark blue sky in the mystic realm. It was as if his entire body was filled with lead. His body and even his spirit were abnormally heavy. So hateful that a white light suddenly covered his body, and Ing Jian's heart instantly chilled. Not long after, he felt a strong force pulling at him, trying to transport him out of this mystic realm. "No! No!" Ing Jian's duck-like voice let out an unpleasant shriek. He flipped over and desperately clung onto a huge rock beside the cold pond. His 10 fingers dug into the sand and water plants under the huge rock as he screamed, "No! I'm not going out. I haven't gotten any benefits yet. I can't go out." That ferocious power was irresistible. No matter how Ing Jian screamed and cried in despair, in the blink of an eye, Ing Jian, together with the rock, smashed into the wet, muddy ground full of dried grass and broken branches with a thud. The hard rock made his chest hurt, but he simply didn't have time to think about it and jumped up from the rock. He cut a sorry figure and was completely exhausted. Ing Jian glanced back and immediately discovered that he had once again returned to the mystic beast forest. "Ah!" Ing Jian roared at the sky. Damn it, he was really teleported out by the mystic realm. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Ing Jian ran madly through the mystic beast forest, intending to find the cold pond at the entrance to the secret realm. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he searched, there was still no trace of the cold pool. Ing Jian immediately sat down on the ground like a deflated ball. His heart was filled with a mixture of regret, disappointment, grief, and indignation. He hung his head dejectedly. Suddenly, a tiny mouse with a sharp mouth came out of the bushes and squeaked at him. This mouse was not even as big as one of his palms. The hair on its head was sparse, and a pair of small red eyes were staring at him. Ing Jian's heart was so stifled and uncomfortable that he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to it. He directly kicked the mouse, causing it to somersault and squeak before it retreated back into the bushes in fright. Ing Jian hung his head and sighed for a while. He glanced at the rock from the corner of his eyes and suddenly stood up, excitedly pouncing to the side of the huge rock. This was the rock he carried out of the mystic realm. He didn't know if there was anything special about it. Chapter 1092. Ing Jian's entire body was sprawled on top of the rock, constantly rubbing against the huge rock, turning it over and over to examine it. Soon after, he was disappointed to find that it was just an ordinary rock. Because it had been washed by the cold pond water for many years, it seemed to be emitting traces of cold air, and was much darker than the usual rocks. Ing Jian let out a long sigh, then lay down under a huge, crooked old tree. Raising his head, he looked at the dense mass of old tree branches that covered his line of sight. Layers upon layers of luxuriant branches and leaves blocked out the sunlight above, not even a trace of light could pass through. He held a signal device in his hand and released it to inform his subordinates to come and receive him. Soon after, a wave of physical and mental exhaustion overwhelmed him, and unknowingly, he fell asleep under the old tree. Not long after Ing Jian fell asleep, a sparsely haired sharp-mouthed rat suddenly drilled out from behind the grass nest, its little red eyes glancing at Ing Jian. Squeak squeak. Behind the grass nest, hundreds and thousands of sharp-mouthed little rats swarmed out, excitedly surrounding Ing Jian. Ing Jian was awakened by the pain of his skin being bitten, and as soon as he opened his eyes, he felt pain in his eyelids, as if his entire eye socket was bitten by something, startling him into screaming loudly. Squeak squeak squeak. The group of rats rejoiced, and at this time, there were close to 10,000 rats crazily surrounding Ing Jian. Ing Jian's eyes were dark, and he fiercely chopped out 2 palms of profound energy, but how could it be so easy to disperse a group of over 10,000 rats? After hitting a few dozen, the remaining thousands and tens of thousands of rats swarmed over, covering the sky and covering the earth, giving him almost no time to breathe. In a split second, his entire body was submerged in the shape of the Chinese character. If one looked down from a high altitude, they would be able to see that Ing Jian's body was completely covered by the dense group of rats, and in the blink of an eye, his 4 white and chubby arms and legs were gnawed until only 4 bones were left. Very quickly, Ing Jian's screams were drowned out by this group of rats. After about half an hour, when Ing Jian's subordinates found their master's location using the signal device, other than a thick layer of withered branches and leaves, they didn't see anything else. The few of them exchanged a strange look and automatically spread out to search the surrounding area. My Chao's section break, 3 days later. Ing Fa, Fan Shuming, and Hong Bai were also forcefully teleported out of the secret realm. Survival of the fittest, and the winner was king. Arbor didn't know that something big had happened in the outside world. It had even alerted the hidden forces of the 6 prefectures. Royal City East Palace Sleeping Chamber. Mo Lian stood up as usual. When she raised her hand, she silently looked down at her slightly stiff left index finger and frowned. The hand that had been poisoned by Ding Ting Ding was gradually losing feeling. He had taken a lot of antidote pills in the past few days. He had also used the medicinal power to treat himself, but it didn't seem to be very effective. However, Ding Ting Ding's idea of poisoning him to death within a few days was still a bit too naive. Mo Lian's eyes flickered slightly. She wrapped her left hand with a rich medicinal power. After a few minutes of treatment, the stiff symptoms improved. However, he also knew that the stiffness would increase the next day. It was as if the medicine could only alleviate the pain but not cure the poison completely. Not long after she got up, Huifeng's voice quietly sounded from the window. "Your Highness." Huifeng had been by her side for many years, so Mo Lian was already familiar with his personality. Chapter 1093. The sky had just brightened when he arrived. Although his tone was gentle, there was a hint of urgency in it. Something big must have happened. Come in. At Prince Mo's command, Huifeng floated in through the window and bowed without looking sideways. Your Highness, something big has happened. Mo Lien turned to stare at him. Why are you so alarmed? Huifeng hurriedly spilled the beans and quickly said, This morning, Simon Manor's high priest announced an exciting piece of news. He said that he divined that a bloodfire phoenix egg will be born in the mystic beast forest within the next few days. Simon Manor, one of the 4 great manors, had never cared about the mundane world and was even more reclusive than Yushio Manor. Why would it suddenly? What else did he say? Huifeng shook his head. Nothing. He only said that the bloodfire phoenix egg will be born in the mystic beast forest at a certain time, but he didn't mention the specific time. Even so, it's already caused all sides to become restless and restless. The 2 sects, 5 factions, 4 great manors, and 8 great patrician families have all made a move. In addition, aside from Shantian Prefecture, the other 5 prefectures have also made a move. Ani Prefecture and Luotian Prefecture in particular have each sent an extremely powerful team to the Mystic Beast Forest, planning to fight over the Bloodfire Phoenix Egg. Mo Lien's handsome face darkened slightly, but then she seemed to have thought of something, and her expression softened. Let them be. In any case, Jojo is still inside the secret realm right now, so he won't run into those people. Yes. Keep a close eye on them. Mo Lien curled his lips into a cold smile. Come inform me when the people of the 5 prefectures are fighting to the death and both sides are wounded. Huifeng cracked a smile and nodded in understanding. Yes, Your Highness. At the same time, Arbor, who was completely unaware of what was happening in the outside world, was quietly immersed in the world of cultivation. Inside his conscious, the 12 jade slips that had been rolled into a ball suddenly lit up. The 6th jade slip flew out and unfurled. Lines of small characters appeared on it and were quickly absorbed by Arbor. Xiaomu abruptly opened her eyes, joy creeping into her eyes. The 6th jade slip of the golden talisman jade tome was opened at this moment. Arbor sat cross-legged inside the defensive barrier and took out a gold-beaded talisman pen. He summoned a dozen blank ebony pieces and began to draw new talismans. There were quite a few new talismans that he had learned, such as the teleportation talisman, the earth talisman, the wood talisman, and the thunder talisman. In addition, there was also a strange and special talisman, rapid cultivation talisman. She first drew a teleportation talisman. She had already tested the magical effects of this kind of talisman before. That's right, it was inside the Great Sea Monastery's pacification pagoda. Xiaomu took out 2 talismans brimming with blue light and tossed one to Ao Yi. Afterwards, the 2 people disappeared from courtesan Zheng's sight. At that time, they had used teleportation talismans to directly move from inside the pagoda to the monastery's rear courtyard. After that, she quietly went to the Nimpan Tower from the backyard, looking for an opportunity to angrily insult Princess Anam. The 2 teleportation talismans from before were the welfare demonstration talismans given by the golden talisman Jade Tome. Arbor had always regretted that she couldn't draw a teleportation talisman because she thought it was very useful. Now, she could finally draw one. Teleportation talisman, move to a single person within 2 li. This was the property of a high-level talisman. Arbor suspected that when she could draw yellow-grade or even black-grade talismans in the future, she might be able to modify this teleportation talisman into a directional movement. Chapter 1094. However, it wasn't bad to be able to move 2 li in a fixed direction now. It was just that sometimes, if she wasn't oriented, she might fall into a nearby pond. But that wasn't a problem. It was fine as long as the teleportation talisman was useful. Arbor pursed her lips, unable to hide her good mood. Squatting inside her defensive barrier, she carefully drew the talisman in her hand. As for the Thunder Spirit Talisman, Wood Spirit Talisman, and Earth Spirit Talisman, their effects were similar to the Fire Spirit Talisman and Water Spirit Talisman, but their attributes were different. In this way, she had gathered all of her high-grade 5 spirit talismans. Even if she couldn't comprehend the power of the 5 spirits, with the 5 spirit talisman, she could still trick others in a battle. Thus, this kind of 5 spirit talisman was extremely popular in the middle 6 prefectures and even the upper 3 provinces. Because high-grade talismans could be activated with mystic energy, even a low-level mystic cultivator could inject mystic energy to use this kind of 5 spirit talisman. It was definitely an excellent talisman for protecting one's life at home. After drawing several dozen of each of the newly learned talismans, Arbor started to ponder how to draw that strange rapid cultivation talisman. Talismans and talismans were basically born from the same root, so to Arbor, they were all the same when drawn. It was just that most talisman masters were more vicious and evil, so they were looked down upon by people of the righteous path. However, this kind of rapid cultivation talisman couldn't be considered a harmful item. It was just that the usage of this talisman was very strange. Its description was as follows: Rapid cultivation talisman, the user will seal off their 5 senses for 15 days, completely isolate themselves from the outside world, lose their 7 emotions and 6 desires, and block off all of their original memories. In the depths of their mind, only one thought would be generated, and that was, cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. Continue cultivating. For 15 days, it will absorb all the power between heaven and earth to the greatest extent. Mystic energy absorbs mystic energy, spiritual energy absorbs spiritual energy, and even this rapid cultivation talisman was really strange. In the past, when she studied talismans and talismans, she had never seen such a detailed explanation. This rapid cultivation talisman, just the explanation alone was written on an entire page. At the end, there were even words of encouragement. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and use the rapid cultivation talisman, you will truly feel the rapid increase in your cultivation and spiritual senses. Join us. Cultivator, success is waiting for you ahead. Arbor, what kind of weird charm was this? To block all 5 senses for 15 days, a person would lose sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch at the same time. Then what was the meaning of life? This must be the feeling of chewing wax when eating chicken thighs. Oh, that's right, I still have to block his memory. No, 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 no. How was this a quick cultivation talisman? It was simply a death talisman. However, looking at the description of this talisman, it was quite good at causing trouble. It was very hot and could raise one's mood in an instant. However, she only drew it and held it in her hands to take a look. He thought to himself that after he left this mystic realm, he should find a little mystic cultivator he didn't know to conduct an experiment first. Let's see how much that person can grow in 15 days. There shouldn't be any trouble. Looking at the description, it didn't seem like a bad talisman. It was just that the conditions for rapid cultivation were a little tricky. The little guy grabbed the quick cultivation talisman and muttered to himself for a while. When he raised his head, he was shocked by the big furry face in front of his defensive barrier. Fuck, what the hell was this giant ape doing? It was so close to his defensive barrier. At first glance, she was really frightened by its big face. The giant ape suddenly grinned at her and even squinted its little black eyes at her. Chapter 1095. Suddenly, that hairy hand smoothly passed through her defensive barrier and directly grabbed the rapid cultivation talisman in her hand. Arbor suddenly felt her heart protrude, and her eyelids twitched heavily. What the hell, it mustn't be what she was thinking. The giant ape abruptly threw the rapid cultivation talisman at Arbor and quickly shook it off. It then grinned at Arbor with a simple and honest expression. You. Before the word cheat could come out of her mouth, Arbor knew that the situation was far from good. This rapid cultivation talisman, oh, no, this disaster-courting talisman was about to take effect. The only thing worth rejoicing over was that she was still inside the secret realm and couldn't jump out no matter how much she cultivated. However, what she didn't know was that when the rapid cultivation talisman activated and she entered a frenzied cultivation mode, she subconsciously started to refine the secret realm. At this time, she mobilized all the mystic energy in the secret realm and gathered it around her in an unending stream. But this time, she was completely unaware of it. Little Six Zheng, Sikong Fuling, and the others, who were still inside the frigid pond, abruptly opened their eyes and looked up incredulously at the surface of the water. They saw that the depths of the frigid pond had been completely enveloped by the dense mystic energy rushing down from above. The mystic energy was so dense that it was visible to the naked eye. Clumps and clumps of mystic energy sank into the water and vigorously rushed toward the nooks and crannies of the frigid pond. The giant ape kicked its legs with joy and roared a few times to express its joy. At this time, Arbor was already completely immersed in a frenzied state of cultivation. She didn't know that the entire frigid pond was being stirred up by her, and the frigid pond water was rushing straight up. Exclamation point. Under the pressure of the powerful mystic energy, Bailey Wu, Xiaomi, and Akito's young lady, Akir, were the first to be unable to resist. They even spat out a mouthful of blood and rolled out of the frigid pond. Immediately after, the three of them were caught by the secret realm and instantly thrown out. Wei Nanshu, Jin Hongwan, and Ali were also thrown out of the secret realm. When they appeared in the mystic beast forest, they immediately vomited a few mouthfuls of blood with bitter expressions. She only felt that her heart and lungs were being squeezed by that terrifying profound energy, making it extremely unbearable. In the entire mystic realm, apart from Arbor, only Sikong Fuling, Qin Susu, Duan Siren, Little Six Zheng, and Bailey Jin remained. These 5 people withstood the enormous pressure and tried their best to take a share of the thick profound energy. However, the truth was just that frustrating. They clearly saw such a dense profound energy hanging above their heads, but they couldn't even enjoy a trace of it. This was like a person who had walked into a gourmet shop. There were hundreds of different types of delicacies in front of him, but his stomach was not good. He couldn't even swallow the plain porridge and side dishes. That was how sad it was. Under their helplessness, the 5 of them successively jumped out of the wintry pool, and then they glanced at each other, and all of them were extremely helpless and speechless. A moment later, the 5 of them were also teleported out of the secret realm. Before parting, Duan Siren sighed and said, "I didn't expect that after entering the mystic beast forest secret realm this time, I didn't even obtain a Xuanji pill as a reward. What a failure." When the others heard this, they couldn't help but smile wryly. It went without saying that their hearts were filled with disappointment. At this time, Arbor was like a whale sucking in water, continuously absorbing the dense profound energy in this place. It wasn't until a day and night later that it completely absorbed all the profound energy in the entire area. Rumble. The mystic realm then collapsed. Chapter 1096. Arbor's plain-colored figure appeared under an old, crooked tree. She was holding a round, transparent mystic beast forest heart that she had refined. Following her instincts, she put this mystic beast forest heart into her inner world. Arbor raised her head slightly. Her black eyes were as still as water as she gazed ahead. There was a deathly stillness in front of her. If she could feel anything now, she would probably beat the ground with her small fists and yell at her miscalculation. She had thought that after the damned giant ape stuck a disaster-courting talisman on her, she would be able to cultivate in the mystic realm for 15 days before coming out. At that time, she would have recovered her senses and memories anyway, so it wouldn't matter much. But the truth was, the second day after the disaster-courting talisman attached to her body, she had refined the mystic realm and tricked herself into being transported out. There were 14 days left until the disaster-courting talisman's removal. During these 14 days, she would be a blind, deaf, and mute person, a jade carving without a trace of emotions or desires. The little fellow's pitch-black eyes appeared especially translucent under the night sky, and her pupils shone faintly. At first glance, anyone would be able to tell that this was a little blind person. Oh, no, it was a little piece of wood that had lost her senses. Xiaomu strolled aimlessly in the forest, not knowing exactly where she wanted to go. She only knew that she was still sensing the mystic energy in the mystic beast forest as she moved. Now, there was only one thought in her mind: cultivate. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. She wanted to find a place with the densest mystic energy in this mystic beast forest and continue cultivating. Now, no one could stop her from crazily cultivating. Work hard to increase her cultivation, work hard to increase her spiritual senses. In Xiao Mu's heart, a slogan resounded loudly and clearly that she would kill anyone who dared to hinder her cultivation. Absolutely not show mercy. This kind of rapid cultivation talisman was abnormal in that it really did what the prompt said. It completely blocked one's 5 senses and sealed one's past memories. It really made one's entire being, from the body to the heart, honestly shout out one goal: cultivation. If Arbor knew that she had been tricked out of the mystic realm and was walking aimlessly in the mystic beast forest, she might have given the giant ape senior a good beating. At this time, many adventurer teams had gathered in the periphery of the mystic beast forest after hearing the news. Of course, they were here for the rarely seen Bloodfire Phoenix egg. How formidable was Simon Manor's high priest? He had divined that the Bloodfire Phoenix egg would descend into the mystic beast forest in the next few days, so his words were definitely not false. Everyone came with the same goal, but there was only one phoenix egg. It was hard to say who would get it. The entire mystic beast forest was turbulent and unpredictable. The experts of the 5 prefectures had gathered, and the people of the Heavenly Tao sect, Daybreak sect, and the 5 factions were all rushing towards the mystic beast forest. When they received the news, they had already rushed over. However, it took them some time to get there. By the time the Heavenly Tao sect master, Sita Min, arrived with a group of Heavenly Tao sect disciples, the mystic beast forest was already bustling with noise and excitement. Brother Situ. Daybreak sect master, Liang Wanshan, led a group of disciples and cupped their hands at him. You've also come after hearing about the Bloodfire Phoenix egg, right? That's right, Brother Liang. Simon Manor's high priest doesn't easily make a sound, but once he does, it truly alarms the entire Sikong planet. Ha ha ha. Sita Min also laughed. I heard that even the people from the 4 great manors appeared together this time. It can be seen how attractive this Bloodfire Phoenix egg is. Chapter 1097. Liang Qingqing couldn't help but ask, Father, do you think there's a problem with this phoenix egg? Why would Simon Manor's high priest make such an important piece of news public? Can't their Simon Manor secretly come and take the phoenix egg away? Qingqing's words are reasonable. Liang Wanshan smiled. Father is also thinking this way. In any case, we don't care. We're just here to join in the fun. If we can't obtain the phoenix egg, everything will depend on fate. Sita Min also let out a long laugh. Sect Master Liang is extremely right. Then let's go. The group chatted for a bit before following behind their sect master into the mystic beast forest in a hubbub. Not long after the 2 teams left, the Mu family's patriarch, Mu Boming, appeared at the entrance of the forest with the Mu family's young disciples, Mu Zijuan, Mu Zhilan, and the others. After the order was given, the Mu clan also set out for the mystic beast forest in unison, each of their youthful faces carrying traces of anticipation. If they could obtain the ancient Bloodfire Phoenix egg, they would definitely be able to raise their strength by a large margin. Whether or not they could form a contract with it was another matter. At the very least, there was hope for now. The crowd was surging with emotions as the cultivators used their own abilities and rapidly rushed over. At this time, Arbor had already found a place with the densest mystic energy in the center of the mystic beast forest and started cultivating. Soon, the mystic energy in the entire mystic beast forest was mobilized by her again and gathered above her head. After using the rapid cultivation talisman and absorbing all the mystic energy in the mystic beast forest secret realm, her cultivation had already skipped the gradual attainment realm from level 13 mystic cultivator realm to the initial success realm. At this moment, she felt that she was about to break through the barrier of phenomenal success. With this kind of abnormal cultivation speed, breaking through from the initial success stage to the phenomenal success stage in less than a day and night, it would truly scare a large number of people to death. Cultivate, cultivate, cultivate. These words kept floating in Darling Qiao's heart. She immersed herself in cultivation again without blinking. Although her five senses were completely blocked, her spiritual awareness grew abnormally ferociously. Originally, his spiritual sense was only at the first level, but in the past few days, it had crazily grown by 2 levels. Now, it had reached the 3rd level of spiritual sense. This was a rather outrageous matter. It should be known that an ordinary person's Xian sense was only about 60% of their cultivation. This was already considered not bad. In other words, a level 13 great mystic cultivator's mystic conscious could be considered perfect if it reached level 7 at most. As for Arbor, although his cultivation had yet to break through to the spirit realm, his conscious had already broken through to the spirit realm, and his spiritual sense had already broken through to the 3rd level. Such a heaven-defying act was truly unique in the world. The growth of one's profound sense was much more difficult than one's own cultivation. This was something that everyone knew. What could it be that his profound sense could increase by 1 level in 1 or 2 days? That was absolutely impossible. Arbor cultivated diligently in the midst of this impossibility, wholeheartedly cultivating to the end. Inside the mystic beast forest, huge waves had long since surged to the heavens. Moreover, the people from the 8 great patrician families had all come after hearing the news and were planning to try their luck in the mystic beast forest. In any case, regardless of whether or not he could get the phoenix egg, it was just an activity. In other words, the important thing was to participate. The Mu family's patriarch, Mu Boming, and the Do family's patriarch, Do Heping, met in the forest and exchanged a few pleasantries with fake smiles. Chapter 1098. Just as they were about to part ways, they suddenly saw masses of surging mystic energy in the sky above the mystic beast forest swiftly heading in a certain direction. The 2 family heads were so excited that their faces trembled. A phoenix egg! A phoenix egg has come into being. Yang Fengyan excitedly grabbed eldest young Sir Qin's arm while wearing a half-veil. Eldest young Sir Qin dodged to the side, evading her claws, and glanced at her with a spurious smile. Shout after you see clearly. If an ancient bloodfire phoenix egg comes into being, it should be accompanied by golden red light, and the flames should burn most of the sky. How was this some phoenix egg coming into being? It seemed like someone was cultivating in the forest and sucking in all the mystic energy in the world. TSK, but this was also quite extravagant. With so much mystic energy surging over, was this person trying to reach the peak of level 15 mystic cultivator cultivation? When Yang Fengyan saw her cousin evade her hand imperceptibly, she couldn't help but pout in annoyance. Eldest cousin, the high priest didn't clearly say when the phoenix egg would appear. Could it be that the phoenix egg still hasn't come into being after we stay in this forest for 10 days to half a month? That's hard to say. A woman with beautiful features and a plump figure leaned against eldest young Sir Qin and imperceptibly swept a glance at Yang Fengyan before sneering lightly. Yang Fengyan's face darkened, and she was about to berate when she heard family head Qin whisper, "Let's go. Let's go over there and take a look." The direction he was pointing at was precisely where the mystic energy was surging. Arbor didn't know that a large group of people was rushing to her location. Although her 5 senses and memories were temporarily blocked, she still had her instincts. Before she entered closed-door cultivation to absorb mystic energy, she had already set up several talisman matrices nearby. Right now, she was at the critical juncture of breaking through to phenomenal success as a level 13 mystic cultivator, so she naturally didn't have the time to pay attention to the outside world. As for Do Heping, Mu Boming, and Qin Guilu's group, it was impossible for them to immediately discern the direction and rush to Arbor's location in a short time. After all, the entire mystic beast forest was enormous. Even though they were looking at a mountain, they were still a long way from Xiaomu. Ding dang, the clear and melodious footbell rang nearby. A slender figure appeared at the periphery of the array and curiously sized up the situation. He clearly felt that the wind and clouds were surging in this place, and the profound energy was rather dense, so why didn't he see a single person? Sikong Fuling, the saintess of the demonic cult, looked up curiously at the sky. Above the head of the pitch-black trees that intersected with each other, waves of profound energy were like an upside-down whirlpool, pouring down towards a single point. Impressive. Seekong Fulling's eyes moved slightly. Suddenly, a voice shouted, "Princess, it's her." Seekong Fulling. Seekong Fulling turned her head to look with a mocking smile hanging from the corner of her mouth. A princess of 1,000 gold? You can't run into this forest where thousands of beasts are hibernating to court death. Before he could finish his words, he suddenly felt a tyrannical wave of profound energy coming straight at his chest. That damned guy, he actually attacked her without saying a word. While Seekong Fulling was speechless, her entire body dodged to the left, evading this swift and fierce palm strike. When she turned around to take a look, she saw that the person's palm strike had instantly blasted half of an ancient tree next to her. With a crack, the entire tree toppled over and smashed fiercely in her direction. A severe glint flashed across Seekong Fulling's eyes, and with a furious shout, she swiftly sent a punch flying over. Chapter 1099. Borrowing the force of her punch, Seekong Fulling swiftly leaped into the air, grabbed the ancient tree branch above her, and flipped to the top of the tree. Her charming eyes gazed frostily at the two women who were slowly walking out of the pitch-black forest. The woman in the lead was exceptionally bewitching. Purple shadows were drawn out around her eyes using a special flower juice, embellishing her beautiful little face even more incomparably gorgeous. Her long purple strapless dress trailed on the ground, perfectly outlining her lithe figure. She was a stunner, but unfortunately, her brain wasn't good, and she attacked indiscriminately. Seekong Fulling glanced coldly at the newcomer. "Who are you?" She didn't look like a princess from any country. How could there be a princess dressed so bewitchingly, like a prostitute from a brothel? Audacious! You actually dare to be so rude in front of our Raksha princess? Hurry and kneel down and kowtow to our princess to apologize. Startled, Seekong Fulling turned to look at the Raksha princess in disbelief. You're the Raksha ghost sect's Raksha princess. The Raksha princess gave her a bewitching smile, but there was no smile in her eyes. Apart from me, have you seen a princess more bewitching and beautiful than me? The Raksha princess' narcissism was unmistakable the moment she opened her mouth. Although Seekong Fulling also felt that she was very beautiful, she absolutely wouldn't be so shameless as to praise herself in front of a stranger. Thus, she chuckled, her laughter filled with mockery and contempt. The female disciple behind the Raksha princess bristled and jumped up. "Princess, she's mocking you." The Raksha princess's lips twitched with a fake smile, and she instantly shot toward Seekong Fulling. "No need for you to remind me. This princess has eyes and naturally can see it. Seekong Fulling, today is the day of your death." Enraged, Seekong Fulling attacked the Raksha princess's chest with a palm. "You old witch! My demonic cult has no enmity with your Raksha ghost sect. Why are you suddenly attacking me? Humph! Little slut, you must be eliminated today. Don't say anything else." The Raksha princess blinked her beautiful eyes and directly reached out to grab Seekong Fulling's head. Seekong Fulling countered with a backhand strike and clashed with the Raksha princess's right claw. Following which, she staggered back several steps and forcefully suppressed the mouthful of blood that was about to flow out of her mouth. Damn it, what kind of cultivation does this Luosha princess have? She seems to be stronger than me. Haha, a mere level 12 mystic cultivator dares to strut around in front of this princess. The Raksha princess's cold and beautiful eyes stared at Seekong Fulling like a venomous snake. She clasped her hands together and raised a ball of dense profound energy light. "Today, I'll let you have a taste of what it means to be inviolable." Ha ha ha. After saying that, she laughed heartily. Thinking that she could get rid of this little demoness today and win back her brother's sect master's heart in a few days, the Raksha princess was in a very good mood. Seekong Fulling really fell for it even while lying down. How could she have known that the ghost princess was looking for trouble with her because she was reluctant to leave her sect master? She mistakenly thought that the sect master was unwilling to accept her, the Raksha princess's, good intentions because he was hiding the saint of the demonic cult in his heart. If she knew the truth, she would definitely tell this Raksha princess, "Big sister, I'm begging you, you really found the wrong person. I've interacted with the sect master for so many years, but there's only sibling affection and no romantic love between us." Chapter 1100. Besides, hadn't her cult master taken a fancy to that black-hearted and merciless wretched doll? If she hadn't been injured by that stinky fellow previously, how could she not even have the strength to escape from the Raksha princess now? Sikong Fuling had indeed come to the mystic beast forest to see Arbor. Because that day, her elder brother had rolled back to the demonic sect headquarters in a sorry state, and his chest had even been heavily injured, which infuriated her greatly. She had to come and see who exactly was so vicious to deal such a heavy blow to her cult master. Her original plan was to get close to this little brat and pretend to be on good terms with her. Then, she would take advantage of the latter's unpreparedness to stab her and avenge her elder brother. However, this stinky child didn't like her at all from the very beginning. To think that she had purposely shown goodwill and helped that stinky lass when she first appeared at the small base. She didn't expect that the stinky lass didn't appreciate her kindness at all. It was truly a joyous occasion that came to naught. In the end, not to mention getting close to that wretched lass, she was nearly toyed to death by that crafty and eccentric girl. If the Raksha princess explained things clearly now, Sikong Fuling would definitely have to explain to her. How infuriating! Not only was she beaten up by Arbor, but she was also tricked. Now, she even had to take the blame for her. The Raksha princess didn't say anything and just beat Sikong Fuling to death. From the beginning until now, a smug smile hung on the Raksha princess's lips. Sikong Fuling, you, the holy lady, must die in this mystic beast forest today. The Raksha princess chased after Sikong Fuling and repeatedly struck her with mystic energy. You can't escape. Fuck. Sikong Fuling really wanted to curse. This neurotic Raksha ghost sect master seemed to have gone mad and was bent on killing her. Why was this so? Raksha princess, don't bully me. Sikong Fuling turned around and exchanged a palm with the Raksha princess. She crashed to the left and spat out a mouthful of blood, which also activated the nearby talisman array. The Raksha princess looked in astonishment at the 60 talismans that suddenly appeared around her. It was a binding talisman array. The Rakshasa princess was trapped within. No matter how hard she tried, she was still trapped in the rune array. The binding glyph array composed of 60 blue glyphs could bind anyone below Arbor. However, Princess Luasha's current cultivation was above Arbor's, so the binding rune array could only trap her temporarily. She would definitely break free after a while. Sikong Fuling cut a sorry figure. Originally, her clothes were very thin and translucent, revealing 2 tender white thighs. At this moment, he had been hooked by tree branches in the forest and chased all the way here by Princess Raksha like a dog. His clothes were already tattered beyond recognition and he was almost naked. She hurriedly took out a red robe from her inner world and draped it over her body before looking up at the Raksha princess. Sikong Fuling's eyes flashed as a flute landed in her hand. Placing it to her lips, she immediately started to play the flute. When playing this dark phoenix demonic flute, one must use profound energy in order to bring out the best effect. It was a pity that her profound energy had been severely damaged twice in a row, and she was already an arrow at the end of its flight. When she played it, the effect was greatly reduced. Even so, Sikong Fuling still persevered. After all, she could tell that this binding talisman array could only trap Princess Luosha for a while and not for long. Once she broke free, it would be the time of her death. Chapter 1101. Right now, only by sending the Raksha princess into the nightmare realm could she obtain a chance of survival. Princess! The female disciple behind the Raksha princess cried out in alarm and abruptly drew her sword. With a tense expression, she slashed at Sikong Fuling, who was holding the phoenix nether demonic flute and playing the demonic notes while vigilantly watching her. Sikong Fuling had already exhausted too much mystic energy and was merely forcefully holding on at the moment. A wisp of blood had already trickled down the corner of her lips. Seeing that she had no strength to resist this slash at all, Sikong Fuling couldn't help but sigh in disappointment and frustration. She didn't expect that this trip to the Mystic Beast Forest would actually be her suicide mission. Suddenly, a small, fair, and tender hand with slender jade-like fingers and a white wrist that was as transparent as moonlight drilled out from the side of her face. A claw directly latched onto the neck of the Raksha ghost sect female disciple who was thrusting her sword over. The slender hand exerted a bit of force. Crack! That Raksha ghost sect disciple's eyes bulged in disbelief. Her first thought before death was, how is this possible? That was clearly a girl's hand, yet it was actually as firm as jade and directly twisted the neck of a level 10 mystic cultivator. Broken. Broken. Sikong Fuling's mouth was agape, and her neck stiffly moved. She turned around and looked in astonishment at the little lady standing behind her. Wearing plain clothes and a cold and emotionless expression, she stood in the pitch-black thicket like a jade statue flickering with a jade-colored glow. Bam! The Raksha princess, who had finally broken the entire talisman array after flinging out waves of mystic energy, turned around just in time to see this scene. When she saw that expressionless little lady snap her subordinate's neck with one hand, even the Raksha princess, who was experienced and knowledgeable, couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. This kind of fear and cowardice made the Raksha princess feel exceptionally unwell. When had she ever been afraid of anything? Yet today, she actually felt a layer of fear toward such a young stoic-faced little lady. It was simply exceptionally hilarious. You! Who are you? The Raksha princess stared at Arbor fiercely while cowardly at heart, and she couldn't help but clench her fists tightly. Xiaomu abruptly moved, directly flitting towards the Raksha princess and reaching out to strangle her neck. Boom! Princess Luosha took a step back and threw out a powerful dark force at Arbor's body. The defensive barrier was instantly activated. He blocked Princess Luosha's attack without hesitation. Spirit weapon. As Princess Raksha screamed in shock, Arbor's 10 fingers, which were as hard as jade, stabbed toward the back of Princess Raksha's head. At this instant, not to mention the Raksha princess, even Sikong Fuling, who was watching from the sidelines, nearly stopped breathing. Too strong. It had only been 2 days since he last saw this little girl. Why did her cultivation seem to have improved so much? Sikong Fuling simply could not believe her own eyes. The Luosha princess leaped forward and dodged her claw in a wretched manner. She turned around and didn't have time to speak. Xiaomu stomped her foot on the ground, immediately creating a small pit. Her expression didn't change at all as she clawed forward with her small hand, ripping off half of the Raksha princess's tube top with a rip. Sikong Fuling, . Fuck. If not for the fact that this little imp was a girl, she would have thought that this child was a pervert and sincere. The face of the Rakshasa ghost sect's princess immediately turned green. She looked at the girl in front of her in disbelief. Suddenly, her brows twitched, and she nearly exclaimed, "Why, you're blind?" Chapter 1102. Sikong Fuling looked over in shock and finally saw Arbor's current expression. Her eyes were like 2 pools of cold water. Although they were limpid, pitch-black, and extremely watery, one could see that there was no focus in them at all. She really was blind. How was this possible? Sikong Fuling sat up straight in shock. She was clearly fine several days ago, so how did she become blind when they met today? Arbor pursed her thin lips, and her eyes did not fluctuate in the slightest. She instinctively spread out her spiritual senses to the left and reached out to grab the evil person who had broken her talisman array. She had said before that anyone who obstructed her cultivation would be sent to the netherworld and would not be tolerated. The Raksha princess was thoroughly enraged. A blind person also dared to be impudent in front of her. This girl really had to be properly taught a lesson. Come out. Misty Night Wolf! The Raksha princess bellowed. A large wolf the size of 2 calves with shining pitch-black fur suddenly appeared next to the Raksha princess. Sikon Fulling swallowed her saliva and cried out to Arbor, Level 14 Mystic Beast, Misty Night Wolf. Be careful. The Misty Night Wolf bared its sharp teeth at Arbor and crawled on the ground. It suddenly howled and flew toward Arbor. Bam! Qing Luan, who had abruptly appeared in front of Arbor, kicked the Misty Night Wolf to the ground. It whimpered twice, and its eyes emitted a wild and untamed green light. Arbor's surging spiritual senses formed a swift and invisible mental attack that directly penetrated the other party's conscience and tore it apart. Ah! The Raksha princess, who did not expect such a move, was caught off guard. Her conscience felt like it had been ruthlessly torn apart and was on the verge of shattering from the root. This caused her to be flustered and short of breath, and her body also followed up with the most honest reaction and spat out a large mouthful of blood. This was mystic conscience. No. This was spiritual sense, right? How could a little mystic cultivator's conscience generate spiritual sense? The Rakshasa princess only felt that her head was in a daze and in pain. Before she could think about it, she already had the intention to retreat. She extended her hand to summon the Fog Night Wolf back, turned around, and fled in a sorry state without looking back. Arbor looked at the Luosha princess coldly. Although she couldn't see, she could follow her with her psychic sense. Seeing that the man had indeed left the area as if he was fleeing, Arbor indifferently withdrew his spiritual sense and walked forward aimlessly. Sikon Fulling dazedly looked at her and called out, "Hey," only to see her slowly walk away without even turning her head. Sikon Fulling sighed softly as she watched her departing back view with a sour taste in her heart. This little fellow had unintentionally saved her life, and she wasn't someone who couldn't tell good from bad. After this incident, Sikon Fulling felt some gratitude toward the little fellow in her heart. My Lotuses section break. Greetings, Princess. 2 royal maids dressed in pink and green bowed in unison toward a woman who was slowly walking over with a smile while carrying a small floral food box. That girl looked to be 17 years old and had a delicate and beautiful rosy complexion on her fair oval face. Her combed black hair was coiled into a unique swan bun with a hairpin, and 2 purple-red pearl hairpins were inserted into the bun. Her exposed white wrists were also wearing a pair of priceless gold-threaded jasper bracelets. Seeing the 2 royal maids bow to her, that woman nodded slightly and said with excellent etiquette, "You 2 need not be so courteous." Chapter 1103. Thank you, Commandery Princess, the 2 junior royal maids said as they straightened up. Is His Highness inside the study? Commandery Princess and smiled faintly with an indescribable gentleness. The 2 royal maids exchanged glances before one of them mustered up her courage and replied, "Yes." Can you send someone to pass on the message that requests to see His Highness? Yes. The other royal maid hastily turned around and ran towards the junior eunuch's duty room. Commandery Princess stood outside the Eastern Palace's courtyard wall and waited quietly, not revealing the slightest bit of impatience or irritation. After a short while, the eunuch Xiao 11Z strode over and bowed to Commandery Princess Commandery Princess, His Highness has some important matters to attend to, so he cannot find the time to meet you for the time being. Please return. Nodded gently as she handed the small food box in her hand to Xiao 11Z. I'll have to trouble eunuch Xiao 11Z to hand this food box to His Highness. This is a pastry that made for Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. Her Majesty the Queen Dowager liked it very much after eating it, so she instructed to give some to His Highness. Ah, yes. Thank you, Her Majesty the Queen Dowager, thank you, Commandery Princess. Xiao 11Z quickly and respectfully accepted it with both hands before saying to Commandery Princess with a smile, "Take care, Commandery Princess." Commandery Princess nodded with a smile before turning to board a small sedan and returning the way she came. Xiao 11Z peered at that small sedan before letting out a sigh of relief. He muttered to himself, "Fortunately, she didn't pester me. At least she's tactful. Eunuch Shao 11Z, why is His Highness not seeing the commandery princess? A royal maid in green couldn't resist asking softly in bewilderment. The commandery princess also had a lot of face in front of Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. Logically speaking, even if it was out of consideration for Her Majesty the Queen Dowager, His Highness should not be so cold to the commandery princess. Shoo, what do you know? Shao 11Z grumpily waved his hand at those two royal maids. His Highness is busy, so how could he have the time to see this person today and see that tomorrow? Alright, hurry up and do your work. We don't need servants who talk too much in the Eastern Palace. Just remember what your master says and do it. There's no need for so many whys. After being rebuked by Shao 11Z, the royal maid instantly shut her mouth in embarrassment. She curtsied and muttered, yes. The sedan passed through a small garden outside the Eastern Palace and took a detour to the Empress Dowager's bedroom. Princess. Walking beside the sedan, a young girl with a long face couldn't help but pout and say, His Highness is too unreasonable. The princess was ordered by the Empress Dowager to deliver the pastries, but the crown prince didn't even see you. Shut up. Commandery Princess Anne's frigid voice traveled out from behind the curtain. Is His Highness's affairs something a little wicked servant like you can casually fabricate? If you continue to talk nonsense like this and don't know your limits, I'll send you out of the palace tomorrow and send you back to the Marquis of Su Anne's residence. Ah! That young maidservant gaped in horror and rolled on the ground in fright. She repeatedly kowtowed and begged for mercy, Miss, please don't send me back. Yes, it was this servant who spoke out of turn, it was this servant's fault. Miss, this servant won't dare to do it again in the future. Commandery Princess then calmly ordered, stop. Afterwards, she lifted the curtain by an inch and bent down to get out of the sedan. She then walked up to the young maidservant gracefully. Looking at her fearful appearance, Commandery Princess sighed softly and bent down to help the young maidservant up. Chapter 1104. Do you know what you did wrong? Commandery Princess asked her gently as she patted away the dust on her skirt. The little girl cowered a bit, her face still ghastly pale. This servant misspoke. Commandery Princess said dryly, Su, you are my personal maidservant. Your every word and action, when you go out, represents this princess. You must remember not to speak carelessly in the future. The little girl sniffled as she wiped her tears with her sleeve and nodded vigorously. Yes, Su will remember. Commandery Princess then smiled and pulled her back to the sedan chair. It's getting late, so we have to hurry back. Ever since Anne's parents passed away, she had been staying by Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's side, and her residence was inside the Queen Dowager's longevity palace. All these years, the Queen Dowager doted on her as if she was her biological granddaughter. Anne's status had also risen from the original orphan girl to the point where everyone fawned over her. In order to maintain her current status, she had to speak and act cautiously and abide by the rules. Although Her Majesty the Queen Dowager treated her as her biological granddaughter, she was not really her biological granddaughter after all. But if she could fight for another identity, then it would be a different story. She would no longer have to worry about difficulties in the palace in the future. Back then, she had brought Su into the palace from the Marquis of Su Anne's estate, so she could be considered her #1 confidant. It was precisely because of this that she had to give her a warning from time to time to prevent her from foolishly inviting trouble for herself. Commandery Princess, we have arrived. Su reminded her softly. It was only then that Commandery Princess returned to her senses. She looked at Anya Pavilion that she was staying in and stepped out of the sedan chair. After looking up for a while, she strode towards the Queen Dowager's bedchamber. Let's go to Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's place to take a look first. Commandery Princess. At this time, another yellow-clothed young lady came out of Anya Pavilion and bowed to Commandery Princess The Madam of the Marquis of Anne's estate has sent an invitation to request an audience. Commandery Princess increased her brows. What did she come here for? She did not have a good relationship with this aunt. Ever since her parents passed away, if Her Majesty the Queen Dowager had not taken her in, who knew how she would have been tormented by this aunt? As a result, her feelings towards the Marquis of Anne's residence also faded with each passing day. Commandery Princess, you should meet the Marquis to avoid gossip. The palace maid dressed in yellow was able to distinguish right from wrong and spoke up to remind her. Commandery Princess nodded faintly. Bring her over. After a short while, the Marquis of and estate's Marquis Madam shuffled over with small steps, followed by a young woman with a plump figure. When the Marchioness saw Commandery Princess she threw herself at her while bawling, "Little Ninth, you have to uphold justice for your fifth brother." Ninth sister. The young married woman behind her also started to cry. Commandery Princess Anne's head swelled from their crying, and her expression involuntarily turned cold. What happened? Marchioness, fifth young mistress, speak properly. The Marchioness of the Marquis of Anne's estate sobbed as she clutched her handkerchief. After being helped up by old fifth's wife, she said to Commandery Princess "Little Ninth, your fifth brother, he died so tragically." What happened to fifth young master? Commandery Princess asked indifferently. Your fifth brother was killed by someone. He died in the secret room of his own room. The doctor said, Woo-woo, he was starved to death. Chapter 1105. The Marchioness of the Marquis of Anne's estate cried and shouted while patting her chest, "You must seek justice for your fifth brother. Your fifth brother can't have died in vain like this." On the side, the fifth young madam pretended to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes, but she was sneering inwardly. This old woman simply didn't know what she was talking about. Did she really think that Commandery Princess would seek justice for her? Did she forget what she had done to the Commandery Princess back then? Yet she still dared to plead with someone else now. If it weren't for this old woman insisting on dragging her into the palace, she would have long left the Marquis of Anne's estate, that impoverished household, and fled far away with her little sweetheart. Hu Yukong, that wretched man. So what if he died? Why did he have to die so shamelessly? When he was found naked in the secret chamber with a servant girl who did rough work in the court. It really made her lose face. She couldn't shed a single tear for this bastard. The fifth young madam sneered. Yet she pretended to be sobbing on the surface as she followed behind the granny and put in her best performance. After Commandery Princess understood the situation, she told the Madam of the Marquis of Anne's estate calmly and distantly, "The Marquis truly flatters me too much. Since such a major incident has occurred, the Supreme Judiciary will certainly send people to investigate properly. Anne is only an unmarried woman, so how could she have the ability to interfere with the Supreme Judiciary's investigation? Madam, please restrain your grief and wait for the news at home." You! The Madam of the Marquis of Anne's estate glared at Commandery Princess Great! Ever since you became a Commandery Princess, you completely disregarded the Marquis of Anne's estate, right? The old woman rebuked loudly, "Don't forget. You are a young lady from the Marquis of Anne's estate, and you are called Hu Xuan. Don't even know your ancestor's surname." Anne clenched her fists in anger. "Madam, please mind your words and actions. I am your aunt, your elder. What's wrong with me lecturing you?" The old woman rebuked indignantly, and she snorted eccentrically with a crooked mouth. "If you can't uncover the true culprit in your fifth brother's matter, I won't be done with you." "Oh? Who do you want to be done with?" A cold rebuke came from behind them. Commandery Princess Anne looked up with reddened eyes and hastily curtsied. Anne greets the Queen Dowager. The fifth young mistress shuddered and cursed the old lady in her heart. This damned old woman dared to be so arrogant in the palace, making a big fuss. Now, she had attracted the attention of the Empress Dowager. Let's see how the Empress Dowager will get out of the situation. Don't implicate me. The Marchioness of Su and was also shocked. She quickly turned around and put on a fawning old face, bowing in greeting. This subject's wife greets the Empress Dowager. The Queen Dowager didn't even look at that old and young pair as she walked past them to Yi and sighed. She patted her small hand with a smile and asked, "Ithin, we heard that you went to the Eastern Palace. What is that grandson of mine doing?" Commandery Princess Yi-en explained with a smile, "His Highness is busy with official business," so Yi-en left after handing the pastries to eunuch Xiao 11Z. The Queen Dowager was taken aback. She glanced at Commandery Princess Yi-en before remarking with a shake of her head, "That's true. This grandson of mine is good in every way. It's just that once he gets involved in official business, he forgets about sleep and food, forgetting everything else. Yi-en does not dare to disturb you. Oh we know that you are the most sensible one." The Queen Dowager patted Yi-en's small hand with a smile. "Let's go, accompany we to the royal garden for a stroll. I heard that there is a newly secluded pond in the rear court, and it is very elegant." Commandery Princess Yi-en agreed with a nod with a smile. Chapter 1106. A yellow curtain that reached the ground fluttered gently. 2 guards were standing at the entrance to the Eastern Palace's small study, looking straight ahead. Xiao 11Z walked over in small, quick steps. Inside the room, Prince Mo creased his brows as he looked at his slightly stiff fingers. He applied a layer of medicinal power to them, quickly dispelling this stiff feeling. He propped up his chin with one hand as he stared at his other hand that was loosening and clenching. He speculated that this should be some kind of neurotoxin, but if he couldn't find the source, he wouldn't be able to prescribe the right medicine. "Your Highness." Xiao 11Z ran in hastily with a small embroidered food box in his hand. Mo Lien didn't even look up as she asked apathetically, "She left?" "Yes." This servant informed Commandery Princess Yi-en in accordance with your Highness's instructions. "She didn't pester us and left without another word." Mo Lien nodded. Just as she picked up her brush to write down a word, she gripped her right wrist tightly, a faint viciousness flashing past her eyes. Damn it, that stiff feeling had crept up on her arm again after she used medicinal power to heal it. If he found that guy Ding Ting Ding, he would definitely chop him into pieces to vent the hatred in his heart. After using medicinal power to treat her arm again, Mo Lien looked up slightly and glared impatiently at Xiao 11Z, who was standing inside the room. "Is there anything else?" "Yes, Commandery Princess Yi-en left behind some pastries. She said that she had received Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's instructions and specially gave them to your Highness to taste." Mo Lien glanced apathetically at the food box that Xiao 11Z was holding in his hand. He knitted his brows and said, "Since it's a reward from the Queen Dowager, you can distribute it to the palace servants below. Pick out a pot of first-rate longevity flowers for us as a gift to grandmother." "As you command." Xiao 11Z lowered his head and silently retreated with the food box. He mused, His Highness doesn't even want to touch Commandery Princess Yi-en's pastries. His attitude is already so clear, so why does this Commandery Princess Yi-en keep coming to the Eastern Palace? She really doesn't have any discernment. After Xiao 11Z left, Hui Feng arrived in front of the Crown Prince in a flash. "Your Highness, the Hidden Night Pavilion received news that the Mystic Beast Forest secret realm has been unsealed ahead of time. Everyone was teleported out, but the Crown Princess was nowhere to be seen." Prince Mo immediately lost his composure and jumped up from the stool. "What did you say? Hadn't it only been 10 days or so? How could the Mystic Realm have been unsealed? Wasn't it supposed to be a month? Why didn't it count?" "Your Highness, we've already sent Lightning's group from the Mystic Beast Forest base into the forest to search for the Crown Princess." Hui Feng said worriedly, "Right now, the 2 sects, 5 factions, 8 great patrician families, 4 great manors, Ani Prefecture, Luotian Prefecture, and others have all run to the Mystic Beast Forest. I wonder if something will happen. Mo Lien couldn't sit still on the spot. His little fellow didn't have a good relationship with the 5 factions and 8 great patrician families. In addition, there was also Ani Prefecture and Luotian Prefecture eyeing her covetously from the sidelines. How could he not be worried about her safety? This won't do, make preparations immediately. I'm going to the Mystic Beast Forest to search for her. Prince Mo made a prompt decision. He couldn't wait any longer. He had to go find her. Find her, find her. There was a voice that kept reverberating in his mind, as if something bad would happen if he couldn't find her. His heart thumped rapidly, and his expression was as cold as water. Immediately summon 3,000 hidden guards and head to the Mystic Beast Forest with me to search for the Crown Princess. Yes. Chapter 1107. Hui Feng knew that His Highness the Crown Prince must be burning with anxiety right now, so he jumped out of the window and hastily went to inform the hidden guards to come. Soon, the great king, who was holding the beauty's wrist and accompanying her in painting in Zhao Yi's bedchamber, received the latest news. His Highness the Crown Prince had ordered 3,000 hidden guards to set off for the Mystic Beast Forest and tossed all the unfinished business to him. This son of a fraud. Truly, he had a wife but no father. Every time he encountered a matter concerning his wife, he could even abandon his father. Unfilial son. So infuriating. Mai Lian's section break, at the entrance to Anya Pavilion. Su Er, who was overjoyed, hurriedly followed her young miss footsteps. When she passed by the Marchioness and her daughter-in-law, who were half squatting and sweating profusely, she even provocatively curled her lips and rolled her eyes at them. From beginning to end, the Queen Dowager did not allow the Marchioness and her daughter-in-law to get up. She did not even glance at them from the corner of her eye until she disappeared from Anya Pavilion with Commandery Princess Ihan. The group of junior royal maids covered their mouths as they peeped at the Marchioness and her daughter-in-law, as if they were watching a good show. Afterwards, they dispersed. It was not until a few minutes later that the Marchioness finally dared to stand up with her hands on her hips. She groaned and exchanged glances with her daughter-in-law, who still had lingering fears. The two supported each other and left with tearful faces while massaging their waists. Back then, the Queen Dowager had accompanied the former king to conquer the country. Women were not inferior to men, so she was naturally very forthright. As a result, she also looked down on the bashful Marchioness and her daughter-in-law. Child, how many times have I told you? Don't meet those unnecessary people if you don't want to. The Queen Dowager sighed softly as she turned to glance at Yi-an beside her. Commandery Princess Yi-an's eyes reddened as she said softly, Yi-an was thinking that since we are family after all, it would not be good to go overboard for the sake of face. Sigh, You are just too kind-hearted. The Queen Dowager shook her head before saying with a smile, you should find a chance to meet that little sister-in-law of yours and learn from her. With your personality, you won't be so soft and easily manipulated. Little sister-in-law. Commandery Princess Yi-an was startled. That's right. The little granddaughter-in-law that I've never met. The Empress Dowager said with a smile, for the past few days, Aijia has been asking Gong Chang and to come over and tell me stories, ha ha ha. At the mention of the little crown princess, the Empress Dowager actually beamed with joy. You don't know, she's amazing. Hee, I really like her methods. You know what? The great king's consort Zheng was amazing. In the end, when he saw my granddaughter-in-law, he was like a mouse seeing a cat. Also, that old woman from the Shu family bullied her and she immediately retaliated. Even now, that old woman is still learning the rules at home, ha 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 ha. When the Empress Dowager talked about something happy, she actually looked up to the sky and laughed. The old nanny following behind her couldn't help but twitch her mouth. She hurriedly stepped forward and whispered to the Empress Dowager, Your Highness, you've already mentioned this 3 times today. Really? The Queen Dowager laughed heartily. Afterwards, she turned to say to Ian, who was smiling faintly, "It's a pity that this little fellow hasn't returned from the Mystic Beast Forest yet. Otherwise, I really would have to meet her properly." Commandery Princess Ian didn't know what to say in response, so she could only smile faintly. "Ian, you are 17 this year, right? The Count of Jian'an's estate son is 2 years older than you." Chapter 1108. That's because he is extremely good-looking, and his cultivation is also not bad at such a young age. This Empress Dowager is very optimistic about him. If you're willing, this Empress Dowager will make the decision and let you meet him. The Empress Dowager said with a smile, "If you don't like him, then this Empress Dowager will help you find someone else." Queen Dowager. Commandery Princess Ian's expression stiffened before turning into a bashful smile. Her hand holding Her Majesty the Queen Dowager also involuntarily paused, and she quickly said, "And only wishes to be able to accompany the Queen Dowager." "Sigh, what nonsense are you saying?" The Queen Dowager cast her a glance before harumphing, "I am just an old woman, so it's fine with Fenggu accompanying me. You are so young, so of course you have to find a good in-law. What is there to be shy about? My youngest granddaughter-in-law hasn't even turned 15 this year, yet she has already been engaged to my grandson. That's why it is better to get married sooner rather than later. Otherwise, all the good ones will be taken away." Behind her, elderly Nanny Fenggu burst into laughter and couldn't resist teasing, "Your Majesty, young ladies are all shy. How do you want the Commandery Princess to answer your question?" Okay, then I will make the decision." The Queen Dowager nodded with a chuckle. "In 2 days, have the Countess of Jian'an come over for tea and have her bring that rascal into the palace. Let our Ian take a look." Fenggu agreed with a smile. Yes, Your Majesty. This old servant will remember this." Commandery Princess Ian's slender hand that was hanging by her side clenched slightly before letting go. She revealed a gentle and bashful smile that was just the right amount of gentleness. The group accompanied the Queen Dowager to stroll around the small garden for an hour before returning to the Longevity Palace. After Ian bid farewell and left, Fenggu handed a cup of tea to Her Majesty the Queen Dowager. The Queen Dowager shook her head slightly as she watched Ian's departing figure. "Fenggu, what do you think this child is thinking?" Fenggu quickly said, "Your Majesty the Queen Dowager has already done your best for Commandery Princess Ian. The Commandery Princess will definitely understand. This morning, we only mentioned casually that the Crown Prince should also like such good pastries. But to her, it would become following an imperial edict to deliver pastries to the Eastern Palace. If the Crown Prince wasn't smart enough, he might even develop a grudge against his grandmother." Fenggu nodded slightly. "Your Highness's eyes are as sharp as torches. What can be hidden from your Highness's eyes? It's not that I don't know." All these years, Ian had always wanted to approach the Crown Prince step by step, but if the Crown Prince was truly interested in her, would he need to wait until now? Her Highness is the wisest. Fenggu nodded as she took out a hot handkerchief and handed it to the Empress Dowager to wipe her hands. She casually said, "Then the son of the Count of Jian'an's family today was also deliberately probed by your Highness?" "That's not it." The Queen Dowager shook her head and accepted the handkerchief to wipe her hands, saying, "I have watched Ian grow up. I also hope that she can find a good family and have a good husband in the future. The Count of Jian'an has a good family background. The Count of Jian'an and his wife are both good people. The most important thing is that there are no messy concubines at home. The Count of Jian'an has been guarding his wife for 30 years. That's great." The son of the Count of Jian'an, Peidao, was also young and promising. He never had bad habits. He is a youth that the Crown Prince values, so his future is naturally limitless. We truly want to betroth her to the son of the Count of Jian'an." The Queen Dowager sighed as she said, "But from the looks of it, there probably isn't much of a chance." Chapter 1109. And will definitely understand your Majesty's painstaking efforts in the future. It's also my fault for not disciplining him strictly. The great king's current state is mostly due to my spoiling. Back then. Sigh, let's not talk about it. What's done is done, and it can't be remedied. The Queen Dowager sighed with melancholy. Just like a normal mother, she had followed the former king to conquer the country and suffered enough, so she wanted to give her son the best things in the world. She had spoiled the great king, Mole, since he was young, so he didn't amount to much. The great king's situation had formidable parents and a fierce son, while he himself was unambitious and relied on his parents above and his son below. Thus, he got by just like this. It's just my grandson who has suffered, having such an unreliable father. He has been burdened with a lot of things since he was young. The Queen Dowager lamented, he finally found someone he likes and wants to spend the rest of his life with. No matter what, this widow cannot let anyone ruin it. Of course. Feng said with a nod, these past few days, this old servant has been hearing Gong Chang and talk about the crown princess. This old servant is also itching to meet the crown princess immediately. The Queen Dowager smiled again, her eyes narrowed into slits. I liked it the moment I heard it. This child will definitely hit it off well with me. This child is good at everything. It's just that she is a bit too pretentious and not sincere enough. The Queen Dowager commented with a shake of her head. Actually didn't understand the Queen Dowager. The Queen Dowager was an honest elderly lady, and it wasn't without reason that she liked the Crown Prince and Little Twelfth. These two children were just normal grandchildren in front of her, and they would happily call her grandmother when they saw her. Other children would not be like this. If wasn't so pretentious and let go of her temperament in front of the Queen Dowager, perhaps the Queen Dowager would like her a bit more. Her standards are so high, and the one she likes is the Crown Prince. She clearly knows that it is a dead end, yet she still insists on running headfirst into it when this widow lured her back. The Queen Dowager sighed. At this moment, a secret guard came to report that the Crown Prince had left the capital. When the Empress Dowager heard this, she laughed loudly. She pulled Aunt Feng aside and said, Look. My grandson has gone to chase after his wife. We've only been gone for less than 10 days. Look at how impatient this child is. Ha ha ha. Feng pursed her lips and giggled. My Joe's section break. At the same time, Arbor was strolling aimlessly in the mystic beast forest. If he encountered any ignorant profound beasts that pounced over, he would mercilessly kill them with a single strike, and then instinctively dig out their crystal cores. The entire mystic beast forest was like her home's imperial garden. She walked and stopped, and from time to time, she would use her spiritual perception to scan her surroundings. She was searching for a better place with dense mystic energy to cultivate. In front of them was a small stream, the sound of water flowing through the forest. Sikong Fuling, who was sitting on a rock by the stream and washing her prey, turned her head warily when she heard faint footsteps. He couldn't help but stare blankly. Arbor walked over expressionlessly. After surveying the surroundings with his spiritual perception, he stretched out his leg to walk forward. Hey, there's water up ahead. You'll get wet if you step in. Sikong Fuling quickly stood up and pulled him back. Arbor turned his head, his unfocused gaze landing on her face. Gulp. A loud rumbling sound came from his stomach. Sikong Fuling couldn't help but smile after being taken aback. She pulled him back a few steps. Wait here. Chapter 1110. Arbor simply didn't know that Sikong Fuling was talking to her. She just instinctively found a clean place to sit down. Very quickly, Sikong Fuling set up a bonfire and placed a small type of cleanly skinned mystic beast on it to roast. Not long after, the aroma wafted out, and Sikong Fuling grumbled, My mouth is so bland from eating dry rations every day. Fortunately, this kind of small mystic beast hasn't mutated. Although the meat isn't considered fresh and tender, it's still enough to eat 2 bites. I spent a lot of effort to get rid of the fishy smell. As Sikong Fuling spoke, she threw her a piece of thigh meat wrapped in leaves. Arbor sat at the side like a jade carving. When the item flew in front of her, she couldn't help but reach out to catch it steadily. Sikong Fuling raised her eyebrows, and her probing gaze fell on her. She was clearly blind, so how could her movements be so precise? Could it be that her mystic sense was very powerful? Thinking of the Raksha princess who had been defeated and fled by Arbor, that person suddenly clutched her head and retreated in defeat. Could that be the legendary mystic sense attack? Sikong Fuling's pupils immediately contracted, and she took a bite of the mystic beast meat in her hand. It was hard, sour, and unpalatable, and truly had a feeling of being unable to swallow it. Looking up again, she saw that the little girl had finished eating that piece of thigh meat in a short while. Sikong Fuling inwardly admired this little fellow. She was so young, but she could endure so much hardship. Look at her eating such unpalatable meat without wrinkling her brows in order to fill her stomach. She couldn't even compare to such a small little girl. Sikong Fuling frowned and looked like she was going to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of fire. She swallowed that hard and somewhat sour meat bite by bite, and she repeatedly vomited as she ate. Her admiration for Arbor increased by several degrees. She was worthy of being the crown princess at such a young age. She was indeed born with the spirit of a superior person. How could Sikong Fuling know that the little girl had no sense of taste at all? Everything she ate was like chewing wax, and it was just a subconscious action to fill her stomach. If she regained her sense of taste, not to mention such a large piece of meat, even if it was just a bite, she would spit it out. At night, Sikong Fuling found a clean place to lie down and rest. Glancing over, she saw Arbor sitting upright and still under a tree, meditating with his eyes closed. The corners of her mouth twitched involuntarily. Was there a need for this child to be so hurtful? Would he die if he didn't cultivate for a day? Cultivating at night instead of sleeping was simply an eyesore. She touched the dagger beside her and tossed and turned for most of the night. Then she sat up and looked at Arbor's expressionless face in the darkness. Right now, she should be completely immersed in cultivation. Gritting her teeth, Sikong Fuling stood up and agilely walked to her side. Should she make a move on her? That vicious little fellow had almost taken his elder brother's life with that slash of his saber. That was a real stab to the heart. Even as a bystander, she felt her heart ache. Not to mention how pitiful and heartbroken her elder brother, who had really suffered that stab. Sikong Fuling reached out to touch the dagger tied to her calf and made a motion to pull it out. Then, she paused and looked at Arbor with a melancholy expression. Forget it. She still owed her a life. How could she do something like repay kindness with enmity? Chapter 11:11. Moreover, although she was a demoness, she still had her bottom line. Out of sight, out of mind. Sikong Fuling simply turned and left the stream, heading to other parts of the forest through the night. Less than a second after she left, Arbor opened her eyes, and her tense aura slowly relaxed. If Sikong Fuling had made a move just now, Arbor would have killed her without hesitation. Because anyone who hindered her from cultivating must go to hell. In a moment, Sikong Fuling had slipped one round around the gates of hell. Arbor didn't care where Sikong Fuling went. She didn't even know this person and closed her eyes. Sikong Fuling didn't know how long she had walked for, but she felt that it should have been the middle of the night. Day and night couldn't be seen in this gloomy mystic beast forest, but according to her estimation, it should be dawn now. Sikong Fuling halted her steps and turned back to take a look. She didn't know what was wrong with that fellow, but she was blind and somewhat dazed. Wasn't it too much for her to leave just like that? After all, she had saved her life before, and all the previous small conflicts could be disregarded. What if that fellow starved herself to death just like that? Then wouldn't she have indirectly killed her benefactor? Sikong Fuling also didn't understand her current state of mind. After being conflicted for a while, she couldn't resist turning around and sprinting toward the stream. However, when she ran back to the stream, she discovered that the little fellow had long disappeared without a trace. And right at this moment, a fiery cloud soared into the sky, boiling over half of the sky. A layer of golden red light descended to the earth along with this fiery cloud, forming a spectacular golden pillar that connected the sky and earth together. Stunned, Seekong Fuling opened her mouth wide and looked up at the horizon. What the fuck was that? The phoenix egg has descended. A bloodfire phoenix egg. Father, the bloodfire phoenix egg really has descended, Liang Qingqing exclaimed with a slightly agitated expression. Sect Master Liang smiled and nodded, everyone, be careful. This bloodfire phoenix egg can't possibly have popped out from a crack in a rock. If the phoenix couple is also present, don't do anything and just watch the show. That's right. The sect master of the Heavenly Path sect, Sitamin, nodded. He turned around and said a few words to the excited disciples. The most unlucky ones were Mu Boming, Do Heping, and Qin Guelu. They were originally flying towards Arbor's cultivation ground, but halfway through, they realized that the halo had completely disappeared. At that time, Arbor had already exited his cultivation state and was fighting with the Rakshasa Ghost sect leader, Princess Rakshasa. Mu Boming and the others lost the location of Arbor's cultivation, so they could only search the vicinity in a daze. However, Arbor continued to wander in the forest. How could they find her? Mu Boming and the others couldn't help but vomit blood when they saw the place where the bloodfire phoenix egg had lit up. It was actually a place that was very far away from them in a straight line. This time, they really had to speed up and run wildly. Along the way, there were disciples who couldn't keep up with their speed and fell behind, but Mu Boming, Do Heping, and the others couldn't care less. They just kept urging themselves to go faster, faster, and even faster in their hearts. Their phoenix egg, ah! They didn't want others to beat them to it. Back to Arbor. Not long after Seekong Fuling left, she also exited her cultivation state. Chapter 11-12. She disliked that the mystic energy next to the stream wasn't dense enough and wanted to move to another place to search. Just as she was casually strolling around, she sensed that more than half of the mystic beast forest was suddenly covered by a surge of restless and dense fire spiritual energy. Hurl! Something fell from the sky and smashed toward her head. In the blink of an eye, Arbor turned around and swiftly stepped away, avoiding the whistling sound of the wind. Boom! That thing smashed into the thick pile of withered grass in the forest. Xiaomu used her spiritual conscience to look over and saw that it was a strange oval-shaped object that was sitting on the pile of withered grass just like that. Its entire body was overflowing with a red light, and it looked quite big and heavy. She didn't know what the hell it was, but when it fell from the sky just now, it almost smashed through her head. Arbor turned around and was about to stroll around again when she heard a rumbling sound. When she turned around to look, that oval-shaped thing had actually rolled to her little feet. Xiaomu didn't hesitate at all and directly kicked it flying. Qing Luan, who had silently appeared, couldn't help but cover her eyes with her wings. Didn't I already say not to act cute in front of Master? Master isn't a normal girl at all, okay? She never liked cute things. Master, Master. Qing Luan felt that she needed to remind her foolish master. Pitiful little master, she was actually tricked into this state by the giant ape. A heaven-defying, unparalleled bloodfire phoenix egg fell from the sky and rolled to her feet, but she actually didn't want it. Arbor actually didn't hear Qing Luan's voice. She only felt that something had appeared beside her, so she blankly turned her head and looked at Qing Luan. She kept feeling that her mind was blank, but there was a voice in her heart that wanted to tell her, this weak chicken can't be beaten. Master, this is a bloodfire phoenix egg and can't be kicked. You should pick it up and bring it back. After speaking, she realized that her little master couldn't hear her at all. Moreover, with her current brain, she reckoned that she wouldn't understand what she meant even if she heard. A person who only had the word cultivation in her head basically had zero survival ability. Everything depended on her subconscious instincts for survival. Seeing how she couldn't even feel the hunger in her stomach before, it was obvious how miserable she was now. Qingluan flapped its wings and flew to the little master's shoulder. Its furry little body nudged her neck. "Poor master, don't be afraid, Qingluan will protect you." In the next second, the expressionless little master cruelly reached out and slapped it. With a "phew" sound, it was sent flying. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The blood-fire phoenix egg that had been kicked away strenuously rolled back. Just as it touched Arbor's calf, she raised her small foot and made a kicking posture. "Wait! Paw!" Arbor couldn't even hear what Qingluan said, so how could he hear the sound of an egg? This kick was even more ferocious. After being kicked against a tree, the blood-fire phoenix egg bounced back with a "phew" and once again rolled to Qiao Mu's side with a thud. "Master!" Qingluan simply transformed into her human form. With a messy bird's nest hair, she ran to Arbor's side in tears and grabbed her little hand. "Stop kicking. This is a blood-fire phoenix egg. It can fight and use big moves. It has no problem going up the mountain or down the sea. Even if it's not good, we can roast it and eat it." Chapter 11-13. He knew that his little master couldn't hear and could only see him with her spiritual senses. Qingluan hastily made all sorts of strange movements, jumping and hopping. In the end, he even fished out an egg and knocked it twice. Then, he peeled the shell out and handed it to his little master, pointing at her little mouth. Arbor expressionlessly reached out to take that small egg and took a bite. She, who didn't feel anything after eating, directly stuffed the entire egg into her mouth. Classmate Qingluan's mouth twitched. Why did he feel that this master was even more adorable than before? Arbor turned to look at that blood-fire phoenix egg and walked toward it. A small hammer suddenly appeared in her hand. Qingluan, who was following behind her, suddenly widened her eyes and hastily exclaimed, "You can't eat it now, you can't." The blood-fire phoenix egg rolling under the tree shook its round body for no reason and angrily jumped up and down, emitting a soft cry. "You woman! Stop right there!" Arbor's hand, which was holding the small hammer, was forcefully pulled back by Qingluan, who rushed over afterwards. Qingluan once again gestured with his hands and feet, using images to make Arbor understand that this blood-fire phoenix egg had to be roasted first before it could be eaten. The blood-fire phoenix egg jumped up and bumped into Qingluan. "You damned bird, don't always slander me. You idiot, hurry up and retract the light on your body," Qingluan shouted irritably. At this very moment, everyone in the entire Mystic Beast Forest was rushing over in a flurry. The blood-fire phoenix egg's red light was too dazzling. Even a blind person could find its direction, let alone in such a dark and overgrown forest. This round of light was simply a guiding light. The blood-fire phoenix egg said weakly, "I can't retract it." "Fraud!" Qingluan directly picked up that egg and stuffed it into Arbor's arms. Then, she pulled her and ran into the depths of the forest. "Hurry and go, little master. Many people are chasing after us." "Where are you running to?" A shout came from midair. The speed of the approaching person was rather fast. In the blink of an eye, the huge shadow covered the entire area. This was a middle-aged man with a dark face, a square mouth, and a wide nose. His black robe fluttered in the wind. Arbor hugged a blood-fire phoenix egg and looked at the middle-aged man expressionlessly. Qingluan could feel the man's strength, but fortunately, he was alone. Thus, he hurriedly pushed his little master behind him and gestured for her to leave first. "Master, quickly take the blood-fire phoenix egg and leave first. I'll hold them off here." Arbor's eyes flickered. At this moment, it was as if something was about to emerge from the depths of her mind, causing her to inadvertently frown. He pulled Qingluan's arm and pulled it behind him. The little fellow looked up at the middle-aged man and suddenly threw the blood-fire phoenix egg. The corner of Qingluan's mouth twitched. Then, She saw that in the next second, the little master turned around and gave a swift and happy flying kick, directly kicking the Bloodfire Phoenix egg towards the middle-aged man's face. Qing Luan. Actually, after such a long time, he should understand his little master very well. This kind of fraudulent thing was indeed something she would do. She was a little master who could even abandon Lady Holy Water for her own sect. Chapter 11:14. Little Master didn't like cute things at all, so naturally, she wouldn't have much affection for cute things in the depths of her heart. In her opinion, there was only a difference between those who were close and those who were distant. Those who were close should be protected, and those who were distant could be thrown away at any time. For example, this Bloodfire Phoenix egg right now was just a useless egg that could be thrown away at any time compared to Qing Luan. It was useless. The strangest thing was that middle-aged man. He actually thought that the phoenix egg that his little master threw over was a trap. Therefore, he roared in the air, and his supreme mystic energy pressure increased. His chest and abdomen were filled with swirling mystic energy, and with a boom, he threw down the Bloodfire Phoenix egg that flew to his side. Classmate Qing Luan suddenly felt some sympathy for this egg. Arbor didn't have any expression when she saw this. If she still had emotions, she would be furious. She wondered if this person was sick. Didn't he come for this oval thing? Why didn't he want it now? With such a pause, Arbor kicked the phoenix egg again and sent it flying. The middle-aged man kicked it again. The two people kicked back and forth 2 or 3 times. The phoenix egg couldn't bear it anymore and became angry. These two insignificant humans, what did they think it was? It was the one and only Bloodfire Phoenix in the world. When Arbor kicked the middle-aged man, a red light of spiritual energy burst out from the phoenix egg. No, it didn't even look like spiritual energy, but a higher level of power. This terrifying power directly wrapped around the middle-aged man, and with a loud bang, his entire body exploded, turning into ashes. He died without a burial place. This happened in just a breath's time. The crimson phoenix egg was infuriated, and it cursed the heavens, cursed the earth, and cursed Xiao Mu. It pounced over and fiercely smashed Xiao Mu's large head with a bounce. You damn woman! What do you think this lord is? A ball? You can kick me here and there. This lord doesn't care about face. Arbor looked expressionlessly at the phoenix egg that was jumping in front of her and constantly hitting her little head. She didn't know what it was shouting about. You bastard! You don't want this lord for this weak little green bird. Do you know who this lord is? I am an ancient Bloodfire Phoenix egg. This seat can only condense 1 egg every 10,000 years, an ancient Bloodfire Phoenix egg. This seat is it. You idiot! Why don't you come and curry favor with me? What kind of expression is that? Looking at the egg that was going crazy, Qing Luan kindly reminded it weakly. That egg. What the hell? My name is Blazing Blood. I am the Blazing Blood Phoenix that only appears once every 10,000 years, Blazing Blood Supreme. Great Blood Blaze God. Okay. Great God, great God. Qing Luan's mouth twitched. Don't shout in front of Master. Her 5 senses are blocked. She can't hear or see anything. I can only use my spiritual sense to take a look. The Bloodfire Phoenix egg immediately let out a new round of angry roars, which were directed at Qing Luan. You stupid bird! Why didn't you say so earlier? Are you trying to anger me to death? Oh! Come over here and gesture to her. Ask her why she doesn't want me. Why? This phoenix egg was really going crazy. Qing Luan weakly moved to Arbor's side, tugged at her little master's sleeve, and gestured to her. Little master, the phoenix is asking you why you don't want her. Chapter 11:15. Arbor's 10,000-year expressionless face didn't have a single ripple of emotion. The phoenix egg became even angrier when it saw this. It jumped up and was about to smash her head, wishing it could wake her up. I'm a million times stronger than this stinky cyan bird. Why do you want him and not me? You idiot. You don't even know who I am, do you? Hurry up and tell me. Master, she can't speak. Why didn't you say so earlier? The phoenix egg's rage had reached a critical point. Soon after, it spread out its powerful divine sense and directly rushed into Arbor's consciousness. With a glance, it roared even more angrily, "You damned woman, you actually already contracted with another profound beast? Don't you know that you humans can only contract with one profound beast in your entire life? You actually formed a contract with a weak Xian beast so casually. With your talent, you clearly have a better choice." The phoenix egg communicated with her mental energy through her conscious pool, so Qiao Mu actually heard it. However, she subconsciously disliked this guy's tone of voice very much. Even if her memories were temporarily blocked, she was still a protective little fellow in her bones. Even if she had contracted a weak profound beast, she didn't need this damned phoenix egg to point fingers at her from the side and make a fuss. Woman! Be grateful to me. Right now, let me help you remove the profound beast contract from before. The phoenix egg's voice was complacent. Unexpectedly, Arbor wasn't happy. With a move of her spiritual energy, she immediately communicated with it. You're not allowed to remove it. Even though she didn't know what this phoenix egg wanted to do, she subconsciously felt that it wasn't anything good. Why? The Bloodfire phoenix egg was really angry. He had never seen such a person. A phoenix egg fell from the sky. Such a good opportunity was placed in front of her, and she actually didn't firmly grasp it. She would rather contract with a weak chicken than him, the great Bloodfire god? This made his heart extremely angry. Give me a reason. The Bloodfire phoenix egg's voice was no longer soft and cute. Instead, it was filled with an invisible pressure, intensely pressuring Arbor. I don't want you. Qiao Mu impatiently used her mental energy to communicate with him. She took out the sleeping little white squirrel from her chest and stroked its soft fur. The Bloodfire phoenix egg was so angry that it was about to burn itself into ashes. He suddenly laughed coldly. Unfortunately, you can't refuse. This damned human actually wants to reject me. He wanted to form a contract with her because of her talent. Instead of accepting his gift, he actually wanted to reject it. What a despicable human. On the phoenix egg's body, raging flames ignited. Those were the flames of his own anger. An extremely domineering and intimidating power seeped into the depths of Qiao Mu's conscious, not allowing her to refuse, and rushed towards that mental contract. In the blink of an eye, in the depths of his conscious, the 12 jade slips that had been bundled together suddenly opened up and formed a wall. The golden talisman jade tome activated its self-protective consciousness and blocked the phoenix egg's spiritual energy. At the same time, an angry consciousness rushed out of Arbor's consciousness and flew towards the phoenix egg's mental contract. Arbor only felt his consciousness surge like a raging wave. The two fiercely collided. His pupils shrank. In the next moment, because of the endless pain in his consciousness, he spat out a mouthful of blood. The green vine in her sleeve instinctively drilled out and attacked the phoenix egg that was attacking her consciousness. The Bloodfire phoenix egg was stunned. Chapter 11:16. As a result, he couldn't react in time and was hit squarely by the vine whip. However, although he was still in the form of an egg, he was still a Bloodfire phoenix egg after all, so this vine whip couldn't do anything to him. He just felt very aggrieved and face-slapped. The Bloodfire deity discovered that this little girl really didn't like him from the bottom of her heart. It didn't seem like she was faking it. However, he was clearly the Bloodfire deity, the incomparable Bloodfire phoenix egg in the world. Who in this world didn't want him? Moreover, when he wanted to forcefully break the mental contract with that weak beast, he discovered that the weak beast wasn't simple at all. There was a powerful barrier in this little girl's conscience that controlled everything with absolute mental defense. He really didn't expect that this little girl, who looked to be only 14 or 15 years old, would have such a strange existence in her conscience. At this time, the second batch of people from Ani Prefecture arrived. Ani Prefecture's disciple, Gong Yang, led more than 50 disciples to Arbor's group. He couldn't help but exclaim when he saw her. "It's you!" After so many years, this little girl's appearance was firmly imprinted in the depths of his mind. 2 years ago, the battle on the Holy Water sect's main peak nearly killed all the Ani Prefecture disciples on the spot. As Hong Jinchuan's eldest disciple and a level 12 mystic cultivator, Gong Yang followed Hong Jinchuan from beginning to end and led his team to trample all over the Holy Water sect's peaks. Before Arbor could open the Tianji treasure blueprint, Gong Yang collapsed from exhaustion. As a result, he escaped a calamity and didn't directly enjoy the Tianji treasure blueprint's attack. He only saw that little girl from the Holy Water sect madly flinging out a divine weapon and indiscriminately killing many people. Afterwards, he was thrown off the main peak by a huge force and completely fainted. When he fled back to Ani Prefecture's stronghold like a stray dog, he heard from others that his master, Hong Jinchuan's life tablet, had completely shattered. Of the more than 300 Ani Prefecture disciples who went with him to encircle the Holy Water sect, only a dozen or so escaped. Among them, there were many who were missing limbs and were mentally deranged. He didn't expect to meet this little girl from the Holy Water sect again in the Mystic Beast Forest 2 years later. A trace of fear and jealousy flashed in Gong Yang's eyes. He hurriedly approached a robust old man in his 60s and loudly said, "It's her, Consecrator Li. A remnant of the Holy Water sect. She might know the whereabouts of the sacred water. Also, she has a divine artifact, the Tianji treasure map." "What?" The old man named Consecrator Li was overjoyed when he heard the news. He looked at Arbor and laughed. "That's really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. There is indeed a type of person in this world who is gifted and born with great luck. Look, there's the divine artifact Tianji treasure map and the sacred beast phoenix egg." Consecrator Li's gaze fell directly on the bloodfire phoenix egg beside Arbor's leg, and his eyes revealed a greedy light. "Wait until I catch you, little girl. I'll interrogate you to find out the whereabouts of the holy water." Consecrator Li reached out his hand to grab Arbor as soon as he finished speaking. However, he caught nothing but air. Xiao Mu's footsteps shifted extremely quickly, and she kicked that phoenix egg directly at the elder. She instinctively believed that this person also came to ask for the phoenix egg. That old man chattered so much earlier, but she didn't hear a single word. However, the bloodfire phoenix was very angry. Chapter 11:17. In his current situation, he was still an egg after all. Earlier, he had already used all his strength to finish off that middle-aged man in one move. But now, he was powerless to continue. The comical thing was that Pundit Li didn't dare to directly grab that phoenix egg emitting dense flames. He had just shaken out a net from his inner world and originally wanted to catch this egg first. Who knew that this egg was completely conscious? When it saw Pundit Li take out a net to catch it, it rolled back to Arbor's side as if the egg had grown legs. Pundit Li's aura sank, and he emitted a powerful mental pressure that crushed Arbor. Although Pundit Li's cultivation had been suppressed to level 1 spiritual cultivator and he didn't dare to easily use spiritual energy under the heavenly law's nose, his mystic conscience had already reached level 9. He expected that he could do whatever he wanted in the lower star domain. He originally thought that this attack would definitely crush that little girl until she vomited blood and collapsed on the ground. However, things didn't go as he wished. This mystic conscious attack didn't cause the slightest ripple, and the little girl before him was still perfectly fine. However, he didn't know that if Arbor's conscience hadn't been damaged and his spiritual consciousness hadn't been greatly weakened, that old man would have already been sent to some unknown country by the backlash. The old man let out a faint sound of bewilderment and changed to using the power of a level 1 spiritual cultivator to suppress Arbor. This little girl is a bit dangerous. Punditly, you mustn't lower your guard. This girl has the Tianji treasure map on her. Gong Yang was halfway through his words when he suddenly saw Arbor turn around and cast a glance in his direction. He only felt that the little girl's eyes, which were like icy pearls, seemed to flash with saber light and sword shadows. It was abnormally vicious and malicious. How could Gong Yang know that Arbor's memories had been blocked at this time? However, she seemed to subconsciously remember this person. Many years ago, she had repeatedly flipped through many people's life lanterns in the ancestral hall. She had seen all the holy water sect disciples' images before they died. If her memories still existed at this time, she would definitely remember that this Gong Yang in front of her was the person who made Fat Sister ruthlessly self-destruct back then. He had taken care of them on the first peak for 30 years like it was just one day. Fat Sis, who was responsible for all her daily needs, was gone because of this bastard. She stared at him coldly. Suddenly, she sent a wisp of her spiritual sense straight into the depths of Gong Yang's conscious. Compared to reverently, Gong Yang's conscious was far inferior. This ferocious spiritual sense attack directly knocked Gong Yang back 3 steps. His mind was in a daze. He held his head and howled a few times. Set up the formation. Consecrator Li shouted with a sullen face. More than 50 Ani Prefecture disciples rushed out from behind Gong Yang. They drew their swords in unison and set up an inescapable sword formation. The disciples of Ani Prefecture had cultivated this sword formation for many years, and their coordination could be said to be quite good. When the entire sword formation was in operation, it was as if thousands of swords had formed a red sun, swaying back and forth around Arbor. Consecrator Li laughed sinisterly, and his powerful cultivation once again suppressed Arbor's figure. You can break her arms and legs, but don't take her life. This old man still wants to keep this little girl alive to inquire about the holy water's whereabouts. At this time, Gong Yang's pale face had also recovered some of his lucidity. He glared at Arbor and said resentfully, Consecrator Li, I see that this little girl is a cultivation prodigy. If you use her body as a cultivation cauldron, Consecrator Li's cultivation will definitely rise to another level. Consecrator Li hadn't thought of this, and he couldn't help but laugh loudly at Gong Yang's reminder. Chapter 11:18. Gong Yang, your idea isn't bad. Consecrator Li looked at Arbor, who was standing in the sword circle, with a sinister smile. He shouted to the disciples, remember, don't harm her life. Just break the tendons in her arms and legs. Taking a closer look, you are indeed a peerless beauty. To be able to become this old man's cultivation furnace, it can be considered your good fortune. Ha ha ha. As the old man spoke, he laughed complacently. But he didn't forget to release the strongest mystic energy a level 1 spirit master could release to control Arbor, who was inside the sword circle. This sword circle's advantage was in coordination. It gathered the cultivations of over 50 people, turning them into a whole, condensing them into a ball. In a short period of time, it would be difficult for Arbor to break out of this sword circle by herself. Moreover, her conscience had been injured just now. Right now, she only felt a faint headache. The best method was to find a secluded place to sit down and continue cultivating, recovering her spiritual sense. But the current situation didn't allow her to stop and rest. She could only continue fighting. Of course, deep in her heart, she didn't fear anyone. Moreover, although she didn't know what they were blabbering about, seeing their vulgar expressions, she knew it wasn't anything good. Suddenly, something flashed in the depths of her mind. As if suddenly realizing something, she took out a round bead from her pocket. The Duan family's core ravaging thunder. Gong Yang suddenly screamed. Quickly dodge, this thing is incomparably powerful. Gong Yang had actually been paying attention to Arbor all this time because he was afraid she wouldn't take out the Tianji treasure blueprint at any time to kill them all. But after waiting for a while, the Tianji treasure blueprint didn't appear. Instead, a very dangerous core-ravaging thunder came. Arbor didn't wait for him to finish screaming. She threw down a core-ravaging thunder and instinctively stuck a teleportation talisman on herself and Blue Luan. With a whoosh, she moved out of the sword circle and instantly appeared 1,000 meters away as fast as lightning. Consecrator Li's eyes widened. Before he could react, he heard a loud boom. The disciples of Ani Prefecture who were gathered together were in for a bad time. The disciples in the inner circle just happened to be at the core of the core-ravaging thunder's explosion. They were blasted to pieces, missing limbs, and mangled flesh. The dozen or so people in the outer circle were slightly better off, but their faces and bodies were also covered in blood. They were blown away by the blast of the explosion. The might of the core-ravaging thunder had alarmed all the Xian beasts in half of the forest. For a moment, a loud roar came from the depths of the forest. Previously, because of the birth of the Bloodfire Phoenix egg, all the beasts were dormant and didn't dare to move. Now that they saw that the Phoenix egg didn't move, the boss of the forest finally dared to roar in anger. Arbor and Qing Luan had already turned around and ran away, leaving behind an egg who was hopping and chasing after them. He was so angry that he shouted, "Stop, you guys stop!" Paw! A large, furry white tail suddenly attacked the Bloodfire Phoenix egg. If it wasn't for the fact that the Phoenix egg rolled quickly, it would have been hit by the tail. The tail missed and drew a white mark on the ground. Wherever it passed, a huge rock half the height of a person was directly smashed into pieces. Arbor stared blankly. She lowered her head and looked at her empty little hand. She turned her head to look at the snow-white little critter with an indescribable expression. If she was awake right now, she would definitely shout happily, "Chirp chirp, you're awake." However, she was currently looking at them expressionlessly. There wasn't the slightest fluctuation in her emotions. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.